Where there is fire, there is smoke. Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gasman, live from New York City. And tonight we're going to be doing a double audio commentary, one for the 1972 classic film Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And we will be watching the theatrical cut, not the unrated cut, which is only available on the Blu-ray. And if you're watching this streaming from Amazon or YouTube or wherever you're streaming it from, chances are it's the theatrical cut. And even if you wanted to see the unrated cut, you can only get it on physical media, apparently. So we're going to be watching the theatrical cut of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And later tonight, after we finish, which will be about 10:40 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be watching Rise of the Planet of the Apes, starring Andy Serkis and James Franco and Frida Pinto, which of course came out in 2011. So, but for tonight, we're going to start with Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. I am paused at the very first shot, which is North America, 1991. Now, this movie came out in June of 1972. It is the fourth film in the original Planet of the Apes quintet, which of course started in 1968 with Charlton Heston. And then in 1970, we had Beneath the Planet of the Apes. 1971, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, which I did a commentary on last year. You all can listen to that later. And June of 1972, we had Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which is what we'll be watching tonight. And just to say, yeah, there is a fifth film, which I think is the least of the original five, called Battle of the Planet of the Apes. I will worry about that next year. So we'll worry about that in June of for June of 1973. We'll worry about that next June. And like I said, I'll decide which cut I want to watch for that one. For Conquest, I wanted to go with the theatrical cut. Part of here again, one more time, part of the reason is that if you're streaming this, it's pretty much the only version out there for stream. I know on Amazon you cannot get the unrated cut even if you wanted to rent it and pay for it. So unfortunately, we have to deal with the theatrical version for now. The differences are not huge, except for the ending. The ending is really the only major difference between both films, and I'll explain the differences when we get to that point. But anyway, just to say hi real quick to people in the chat. To Dave 1, lovely to see you, man. Thank you for coming out tonight. And agreed, Battle is a weak entry. Yeah, it's weak, but like I said, we'll worry about that next June. But as of right now, let's go ahead and get started with Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. So here again, I'm paused at North America 1991, and we will start at 3, 2, 1, and play. And I do have to turn down the volume. Excuse me one moment. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but I just started Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. We are at the 1 minute mark as it's going through the supporting cast. Yeah, we're about 1 minute into Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. I don't know what happened there. But Rob, it's great to see you in the chat as well. Yeah, thank you for coming out tonight. So yeah, we're doing Conquest not just because it's the 50th anniversary of the movie, but because of the fact that, of course, the themes of this movie, I think, are rather timely and rather relevant. And I'll be perfectly honest, I did not see the sequels to the 1968 Planet of the Apes original years later, maybe in the past 2 or 3 years, honestly. I saw the 1968 original in high school, and I liked it. I mean, like I said, in 1968, the two science fiction films which changed the course of the genre forever were Planet of the Apes and 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, I adore 2001. Planet of the Apes is a classic, and rightfully so a classic. I mean, the makeup effects, while primitive, are still impressive. And of course, that's what gave Planet of the Apes its scope and everything, was those John Chambers effects, which won the Man a Special Academy Award. It was those makeup effects that made Planet of the Apes a real hit. I mean, yes, there was social commentary. As I said, this is based on a novel by Pierre Boulle in 1963, Planet of the Apes, which producer Arthur P. Jacobs had picked up when he was looking for projects to cover when he was working at the publicity department at Warner Brothers. But when he in the mid 1960s, producer Arthur P. Jacobs was actually at 20th Century Fox at the time, and what happened was that he hired director J. Lee Thompson, who had directed films like Tiger Bay and the original Cape Fear, The Guns of Navarone, those classic movies. Hired him to make a Shirley MacLaine black comedy called What a Way to Go. Now, if you remember What a Way to Go, it's basically about a woman who basically relays to the psychiatrist Bob Cummings that every time she gets married to somebody who's more wealthy, and they end up dying under weird or unusual circumstances. Yes, this is an actual movie. It's a black comedy starring Shirley MacLaine called What a Way to Go, which was produced by Arthur P. Jacobs, who later did the Planet of the Apes movies, and directed by J. Lee Thompson, who directed Conquest and Battle of the Planet of the Apes. And Arthur P. Jacobs obviously wanted J. Lee Thompson to direct the original. He very much wanted J. Lee to direct the original, but unfortunately, because the director was busy working on McKenna's Gold at the time, which was very expensive and had lots of extra shooting and everything. It went on, and it wasn't released until '69. But so J. Lee Thompson was just unavailable, and so that's when they hired Franklin J. Schnapner, who, of course, is best known today as not only directing Planet of the Apes, but also directing Patton. He turned down Beneath the Planet of the Apes, probably a wise choice, to go direct Patton, which, of course, won him the Academy Award for Best Director. Now, I have never read the original novel, which came out in 1963 by Pierre Boulle. I do know that in that society, though, that the ape society is a lot more industrialized. That they actually have, cars and jets or air transportation, which they would later utilize in a cartoon version of the show in 1975. 1975. Excuse me. I mean, and 20th Century Fox, while they were certainly interested in this, they had their concerns. And their initial concerns, of course, were, well, can we get the ape makeup to work to the point where the actors will channel their emotions through the makeup? And that was the absolute key in bringing the Planet of the Apes to life in 1968, were those makeup effects. Now, and of course, based on the success of Planet of the Apes, obviously Fox wanted to do a franchise. And ultimately, this, I think, according to many film historians, I mean, if you don't count James Bond, this is technically the very first, film franchise, which had a lot of, which had a great deal of marketing, had a great deal of toys other stuff that were connected to it that became such an entity unto itself. I mean, like I said, 5 films in an original series, that's pretty impressive. Now, the Pink Panther films, there were about 5 films there before their star Peter Sellers died. But this, I mean, Planet of the Apes is one of the very first, if not, I mean, one of the very first of those types of franchise to have, such a wide impact. But what also Fox executives had noted was that, well, this is a franchise that appeals to mainly families. And I don't know. I mean, the 1968 movie, I think, is mature enough that, I mean, obviously, I could see why kids fell in love with these films in the early 1970s. But it got to a point with Conquest where, Fox started to get cold feet as to how adult and violent the series was becoming. Because, okay, so in 1970, we had Beneath of the Planet of the Apes, which is not a great movie. I don't hate it personally. It seems to be at the bottom of a lot of the Planet of the Apes rankings for the original quintet of films. I don't hate it. It has a lot of issues, but I do not hate it. But one thing you can make an argument about is that it may not be as violent as Conquest, but it's definitely darker than Conquest, I think. I mean, at the end, I'm assuming that most people that are intimately familiar with the original Planet of the Apes films are listening to this, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. At the end of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Charlton Heston basically blows up the planet. Yeah, that's how the movie ends. You blow up the planet and you blow up the franchise, which is about as grim an ending as you would ever expect a major motion picture to have from a studio, especially a sequel to a movie that had such a tremendous impact. And here again, serious, honest to God critical acclaim, which to science fiction was unheard of for the genre. I mean, Planet of the Apes in 2001 were the films that, here again, matured science fiction. And it just seems like a shame where, Fox felt that they had to back down and appease a family audience when it came to the series, because the opportunity for social commentary is, of course, through the roof, as you can see here. Here we have Ricardo Montalban from Escape from the Planet of the Apes. He played the circus owner that took Caesar in, and we see Caesar here in Roddy McDowall in his famous Caesar makeup. Roddy McDowall loved playing this role. I mean, like I said, he played in 4 of the original 5 Ape movies. The only one he wasn't able to do was Beneath, and the only reason for that was he was directing a movie, Tam Lin, which just came out on Blu-ray, courtesy of Via Vision and Imprint Films. You should pick it up. And it's a really good movie, actually. I mean, it has Ava Gardner, and it's directed by Roddy McDowall. It's set in Scotland. And the U.S. distributor kind of chopped it up and ruined it by making it kind of a hag horror in the tradition of like Baby Jane and movies like that. But it was really a bit more sophisticated than that. It's based on a folk legend, and I highly encourage anybody to check it out, particularly if you're a Roddy McDowall fan. Tam Lin is well worth seeing, and it's, even though it's very different in tone and everything, it's definitely better than Beneath the Planet of the Apes. I mean, he was kind of lucky, I think, in that regard. Actually, you can see McDowall in Beneath, but only in the opening sequence, which showcases flashbacks from the original. But they brought Roddy McDowall back, as did Kim Hunter, for Escape from the Planet of the Apes in 1971. And that movie, of course, as I did a commentary on it last year, like I said, but it has a lot more light comedy in it. I mean, Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter proved to be a beloved duo when it came to the audience. But what distinguishes Escape from the Planet of the Apes, even though it's the lightest of all the movies, essentially, especially with the amount of comedy, it's almost like Star Trek 4 when it comes to that franchise. except for the fact that the ending to Escape is very, very sad and very, very grim, as basically Cornelius and his wife Kim Hunter die, and now Caesar has to grow up without them and with the circus owner played by Ricardo Montalban. But here in this scene, we introduce the other actor who will share the point of view with Caesar throughout the story. The black gentleman that you see in the scene that appeared is Harry Rhodes. And he appeared in quite a few films before he passed away at the age of 59 in 1992. But this movie, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, is basically told from two different points of view. One is Caesar, who of course is still with Ricardo Montalban here, who's wonderful. And the other point of view is, of course, from Harry Rhodes' character as he plays McDonald, Mr. McDonald, and he's going to become a pivotal character in this story. Now, Ricardo Montalban is going to be with us for maybe another 15, 20 minutes. So I think it's important that we talk about him. But he's a very famous, very beloved Mexican actor. Star Trek fans, of course, know him primarily as Khan from the original Space Seed episode in Star Trek. And he would come back for the movie Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, of course, being the Khan of the title, where he seeks revenge against Captain Kirk for basically leaving him on this desert planet. And he also accuses Captain Kirk of killing his wife, which is probably not the case. But and he's basically this genetically altered Superman with his band of cronies on this desert planet. Star Trek II is wonderful. It's directed by Nicholas Meyer, and he identified a lot of Horatio Hornblower in it. But the thing is about Star Trek II and Ricardo's performance in it is that he channels Herman Melville all throughout his performance, and he is just amazing. I mean, James Doohan, who played Scotty on Star Trek, said, Ricardo should have gotten an Oscar nomination for Wrath of Khan, and I absolutely agree. I mean, because the thing, and here again, a lot of people know Ricardo from Star Trek and the Planet of the Apes movies to a lesser extent. But I'm telling you, nothing brought me joy than seeing Ricardo Montalban in some of his earliest films, which were released by MGM and Warner Brothers back in the 1940s, because he swam with Esther Williams. And he was in a number of Esther Williams comedies as her beau. And it's wonderful. They sing together, they swim together, they dance together. Ricardo can dance. I mean, he can do so much. You watch those Aqua musicals. I challenge all of you. I know may not be your cup of tea, particularly if you're a Star Trek fan or a Planet of the Apes fan, but oh my God. Check out those old Esther Williams musicals with Ricardo Montalban, because he is just on fire throughout all those movies. I mean, although stay away from Fiesta. That is Esther Williams' worst movie, where it was one of those things where everybody got sick when they ate the local cuisine and got like cholera and everything. It was pretty horrible. Oh no, I'm sorry, not cholera. Sorry, where did that come from? Montezuma's Revenge was actually the chief Malade on that set of Fiesta back in 1944. But yeah, and Ricardo Montalban, of course, he's also famous as playing Mr. Rourke on the television series Fantasy Island, which, of course, also gained him a lot of praise. But you know what? I also love him as the villain in Naked Gun from the Files of Police Squad. He is wonderful in that. And every report I have read, every single report I've read about the man in person as a person has nothing but been positive. I mean, people say that he's one of the most charming men they ever met in their life. And I mean, the man just oozes charm. I mean, by God. I mean, whether it's in those old Esther Williams Aqua musicals, or in Star Trek, or in Fantasy Island, or here in Planet of the Apes, the man just oozes charm. And that's why I love the guy so much. And see, yeah, I just brought up Fiesta from 1947. That's the one you want to stay away from. But check out On an Island with You and Neptune's Daughter. Check out those. Trust me, trust me, and check out those movies because Ricardo Montalban. Oh man, I mean, he was just so full of charm, so full of charm in those. Now, the guy that you see on the television screen here. Is a man by the name of John Randolph, and he's probably best known as Clark Griswold's father in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. However, he also played Tom Hanks's grandfather, Schuyler Fox, in You've Got Mail, which of course is the remake of The Shop Around the Corner with James Stewart, but given like a 90s makeover by Nora Ephron and Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, a lovely little romantic comedy. But John Randolph, he was also in Francis with Jessica Lange, the 1976 version of King Kong, where he played Captain Ross, and he was also in Heaven Can Wait, and There Was a Crooked Man, 1970, and other films in his career, and he passed away in 2004 at the age of 88. And here we have Don Murray as Governor Breck, who's back there. Yeah, here he is right here talking. Obviously, the man in charge, the fascist leader, I guess you could say, of this slightly futuristic world in 1991. Because evidently what happened in 1983 was that there was some kind of virus that killed off the population cats and dogs. And so to take place of the pets, they would basically take the simian population and turn them into pets for humans. And of course, somewhere along the way across between 1983 and 1991, they started to become they started to become slaves, and this, of course, is for a science fiction film from 1972. It's pretty clear that this was influenced by the civil rights movement and the Watts riots in particular, which happened in 1965 in California, where there was a 21-year-old black man who was drinking and driving, and apparently the police got way too violent with him. And this has been brewing up for decades. I mean, how the police would treat its black citizens in these areas of California, especially Watts, and they started rebelling against the law enforcement for their brutal treatment of black citizens in these communities. And of course, this has happened in the past 2 years with the rise of Black Lives Matter. It feels like it's happening all over again. So this movie, it has a unexpected prescience in 2022, which, while it certainly had in 1972 as well. I mean, like I said, I mean, Arthur P. Jacobs wanted a sequel that would reflect the riots and the revolutions which were going on at the time when it came to civil rights and when it came to police brutality of black citizens. It's absolutely shameful, and it's horrible and disgusting. And why it's still going on? I mean, it's all due to power and corruption. which unfortunately this our country's government has overdosed on in the past decade or two. But Conquest is not, I mean, it's definitely one of the stronger Planet of the Apes movies. Uh, I would say it's a good, solid movie that misses the potential for greatness. And I mean that with respect to the fact because, look, we're going to talk about Rise of the Planet of the Apes later, and I think that that is a much better version of this idea. Even though in 1972, because of the strict budget, and also for the fact that they were shooting in basically a large business center called Century City, which had just opened outside the 20th Century Fox studio, and it was property that Fox used to own, but they had sold off in the 1960s because, well, they had a lot of big budget productions that lost money. Dr. Dolittle being one of the most famous ones that Arthur P. Jacobs also produced right before Planet of the Apes. So yeah, this entire movie was filmed basically at Century City, right outside the 20th Century Fox lot, and it's a business district in LA, west side to the south of Santa Monica Boulevard, around 10 miles west of downtown Los Angeles, one of the most prominent employment centers in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. Not in this movie, but and its skyscrapers form a distinctive skyline on the west side. I mean, trust me, if you've seen pictures of Los Angeles, chances are you've seen Century City in one of those pictures. And originally, when back in the early 20th century, the land where Century City is and all these buildings are now, it used to belong to cowboy actor Tom Mix. And he used it as a ranch, and it later became the back lot of 20th Century Fox. And it still has its headquarters to the southwest of all this area right here. In 1956, Spyros Skouras, who served as the president of 20th Century Fox from 42 to 62, and his nephew-in-law Edmund Hersher, an attorney sometimes known as the father of Century City, decided to repurpose the land for real estate development. The following year, in 1957, they commissioned a master plan development from Welton Beckett Associates, which was unveiled at a major press event on the western backlot later that year. In 1961, after Fox suffered a string of expensive flops, culminating with the financial strain put on the studio by the very expensive production of Cleopatra, that was the big loss right there. I mean, yes, they did recoup some of that money. Some of that money was Sound of Music, but man, Cleopatra was a massive blow to the studio's finances. The film studio sold about 180 acres to developer William Zeckerdorf and Aluminum Company of America, also known as Alcoa, for $300 million or $2.4 billion in 2014 money. Hersher had encouraged his uncle-in-law to borrow money instead, but once Skouras refused, he was out of the picture. The new owners conceived Century City as, quote, a city within a city. And in 1963, the first building, Gateway West building, was completed. Next year in 64, Minoru Yamasaki designed the Century Plaza Hotel, and 5 years later, in 1969, architects Anthony J. Lumsden and Cesar Pelli designed the Century City Medical Plaza. So this was all filmed in Century City, basically about 3 years after it was completed and opened. And as you can see, I mean, I mean, for 1972, this is definitely slightly futuristic, as you could say. But back then, it was basically considered postmodern. But I mean, it still works for the story. I mean, I think it works well enough. I mean, of course, Fox were excited to use it because of the fact that they could save money on the production. I mean, this was a very low budget film. I mean, this was only made for 1.7 million in 1971 dollars, which was even less than Escape and certainly a lot more less than the original and Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And when this came out at the box office, it ended up making about 9.7 million. So it still made a decent enough profit for another movie. But at the end of Conquest, I think everybody knew that the next one was going to be the last one, and that they were going to basically close out the series with Battle of the Planet of the Apes, regardless on regardless of the logistics and the story and the makeup and whatever. I mean, by the time of Battle, I mean, it's pretty obvious that they're, some are just wearing masks. I mean, and in Beneath, it's pretty obvious at points as well. Here, I mean, here again, the makeup effects, as dated as they are now, for this movie, they work. They work just well enough. I mean, here again, low budget production. The makeup is still pretty impressive for the key players, especially Caesar. And a lot of the simians in the back are probably obviously wearing masks, which weren't very elaborate. But, hey, it works just fine, I think, for this movie. And unlike Battle, my whole problem with Battle is that, at one point it looked like the vehicles were basically toys, like toy trucks and toy cars. I don't know. It seemed almost like a toy commercial at that point. The only thing worth sitting through Battle for, in my opinion, is Roddy McDowall's performance. And here, I think his performance may be the strongest of all four Apes movies, maybe aside from the original. The original, he was part of an ensemble, and with Escape, he was part of a duo. But here, here he basically commands. And so here's Caesar about to mate with a female ape, which happens to be Arthur P. Jacobs' wife. Yes, that is indeed the producer's wife underneath the makeup there, about to get it on with Caesar. Her name is Natalie Trundy. Natalie Trundy, who was married to Arthur P. Jacobs from 1968, when right after the first movie came out, and was married to him until 1973 when he passed away. So she was with him by his side. And it's fun seeing like the behind the scenes material on the Blu-rays and everything, because you essentially see him and Trundy in the ape makeup always together, which is really kind of adorable. It's really, I found that very, very sweet and very, very adorable to see pictures of them together where they were, basically holding hands or had their arms around each other, where she was fully in the ape makeup and he was just in, his producer's suit and everything, very Dory Sherry, I guess you could say, in terms of his attire. It's, lovely pictures, lovely pictures. Go check them out sometime. They are really lovely. Now, the auctioneer right here is an actor by the name of Gordon Jump. And if that name means anything to you, you'll probably recognize him as either Big Guy Carlson from WKRP in Cincinnati. He was also the incompetent chief of police in the sitcom Soap, which broadcast after Three's Company at that time in the late 70s. And he also guest starred on a two-part episode of the 1980s sitcom Different Strokes, in which he played a pedophile who tries to molest main characters Arnold and his friend Dudley. And he also played the Maytag repairman in commercials for Maytag brand appliances from 1989 until his retirement from the role in July of 2003. So in his later years, he was known as the Maytag repairman. And we also know. I'm not gonna give it away right now. We're gonna wait. But There is something else I wanted to mention about another actor in this movie, but like I said, I'll wait till we get to another scene with him. But yeah, that was Gordon Jump as the auctioneer, and yeah, I mean, this is essentially in this universe, this is basically just slavery and fascism at its worst, and pretty scary. I mean, the fact that we're kind of reliving what we're going through in the early '70s, but maybe even a bit worse, makes this movie all the more terrifying in its prescience. But wow, I mean, and it's really weird because when I first saw all four of these sequels, from Beneath, Escape, Conquest, and Battle, honestly, I felt that Escape and Conquest were the two that were definitely worth seeing of the four. You don't have to watch Beneath or Battle. You really don't have to, but if you do, I mean, it's really weird because I'm wondering. I got all five of these movies on Blu-ray, and my whole thing is now about watching these in order. I think what I would do is watch the original, then Escape, and then Conquest, and then basically maybe watch Beneath and Battle together on some other day. Uh, that's how I kind of approach these Planet of the Apes movies from the early '70s now. But of course, we can't have an ape that is capable of intelligence and is able to communicate things to other apes that could cause a revolution. Oh, no, no, no. We don't. We That's the last thing that society wants to happen. Now, okay, Don Murray here as the villain of the piece. He plays Governor Breck, a governor who has obviously lost sight of humanity in the worst ways. Because of the fact that he knew the German language, he actually studied his entire part with the words in German to get a sense of what it was like talking like Hitler back in the 1940s. Now, I don't think I have to. What more needs to be said? What more needs to be said? I think he went the right route, as disturbing as that is. But yeah, he basically learned his entire language through the German language to get an idea of how Hitler communicated his message back in the 40s. So that gives this film a verisimilitude that I don't think that a lot of people were expecting, particularly family audiences at the time who were, enjoying the Planet of the Apes movies, which were, they had violence in it, but it was not like they went overboard with either the violence or the commentary. And that's part of the reason why families had flocked to see those movies. Although I got to confess, and I got to question this right now, while I do think that Conquest is the most violent of the Planet of the Apes movies, I still think Beneath is the darkest. And I know I mentioned that before, but seriously, there's some traumatizing shit in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. I mean, traumatizing shit to a kid. Here again, I can't imagine what kids must have experienced in 1970 when they saw Beneath the Planet of the Apes in the theater. I mean, that was like some traumatizing shit. I mean, at least in this movie, at least in the theatrical cut, at least it ends on a sense of hope. Unlike the unrated cut, which is also only on the Blu-ray, which here again we'll discuss when we get to the ending what the major difference is. Funny, those tubes, they look like a lot like the tubes on Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back. You know, I noted that on my most recent viewing of this. But yeah, here Caesar is being put to work in basically Command Central right here. Now, in the meantime, Ricardo Montalban here is still being interrogated about Caesar. And they basically want to test him to see if he's telling the truth with a device known as the authenticator, which is pretty, here again, pretty scary stuff to a kid, I think. Or maybe it's just me. I mean, okay, I know this is slightly off topic, but look, this is really weird. Look, I grew up with the Muppet movies. I'm a huge Muppet fan. But did anyone else find that bit in Muppet movie with Mel Brooks when he was trying to fry Kermit's brain? Did anybody find that just downright demented and terrifying as a kid? Is it just me? Is it just me? I know that's Mel Brooks, one of the funniest men who ever lived. He just turned 96 years old. God bless him. But man, that is, as a kid, I found that bit traumatizing, and that's why I can't help but think that some of that stuff in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, people would have found equally as traumatizing. This is not nearly as bad. I mean, you know, it's like the guard says. What? I mean, there's no pain involved. You know, I mean, but the reason why Ricardo Montalban is uncomfortable here is because he's not sitting in upholstered soft Corinthian leather. As many people know, in the 1970s, he was famous for doing these car commercials that boasted the Corinthian leather, and there was just a way that he said those words that made him even more beloved by the American public. In commercials from like the 70s and the 1980s, when he just garnered a newfound stardom both on television and off. Yeah, and here he's going to be forced to reveal the secret that, in fact, Caesar is, in fact, the son of Cornelius from from the Planet of the Apes, who, in fact, predicted that this society would come about with the apes being treated as slaves and the humans being basically fascists. Wow. Don Taylor is Don. Excuse me, not Don Taylor. He's the director of Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Don Murray is the name of this actor who plays Governor Breck. I mean, he's actually really good. Although I got to confess, and this is just me personally, but the name Don Murray is now kind of tainted by the fact that he was in one of the most offensive movies I've ever seen, which is the 1981 adaptation of Endless Love. And he played Brooke Shields' father in that, who basically flips out when he discovers that his 16-year-old daughter is having so much sex with her boyfriend to the point where they get a second hand from the Salvation Army to put in her room. The love every parent fears. She's 15 and he's 17 or whatever. And it was from the director of Romeo and Juliet. And it's really just a offensive adaptation of the great Scott Spencer novel. And Don Murray is particularly bad in it, I think, as Brooke Shields' father. But to be honest, I mean, look, he is still with us. He is 92 years old. Still have a long, long career of film and television work. You know, he started out, his very first film was actually the Marilyn Monroe vehicle Bus Stop, where he played Bo Decker in that movie. And that kind of started him off when he got in some westerns like From Hell to Texas and 3,000 Hills, Shake Hands with the Devil, stuff like that. But he was also in a lot of other big films like Advise Consent from 1962, The Plainsman, 1966, Happy Birthday to Wanda June, Endless Love, which I just mentioned. But he was also in Peggy Sue Got Married, the Francis Ford Coppola picture. But his last movie, one of his last movies was the really embarrassing Bo Derek movie, Ghost Can't Do It, where Bo Derek needs to somehow find a youthful body to put the soul of her dead husband in. Her husband played by Anthony Quinn, a very old Anthony Quinn. It won the Razzie Award for Worst Picture, and I would advise you all to stay away from it, particularly when it has a Worst Supporting Actor Performance winner in the name of Donald Trump. So I would advise you all to stay clear of Ghost Can't Do It. If you're going to watch a Bo Derek movie, watch 10 or watch Bolero. Stay away from Ghost Can't Do It. Just stay away from it. Yes, I used to be a Bo Peeper, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Anyway. So how is everybody enjoying the movie? Just to take a quick chat break real quick. Let's see. This was a dark entry, not a family film to me, but one of my favorites. Yeah, when they had Ape for a Day at my local theater, they showed the series in chronological order. Escape, Conquest, Battle, Planet, and Beneath. That would be interesting to watch it in that order, to be perfectly honest. I wonder if it would make me appreciate Battle and Beneath more. That's really funny. This was McDowell's best performance in the series, especially the final speech. Absolutely in agreement. Absolutely in agreement. I do think this is Roddy McDowell's best turn in all 4 Planet of the Apes movies that he had done. And he was very good in Naked Gun, yes. Ricardo Montalban is just, here again, he just oozes charm. He just oozes so much charm. I mean, and look, I had to make that Corinthian leather joke somewhere in this commentary as a tribute to him. But like I said, if you want prime Ricardo, check out Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, as well as On an Island with You, with Esther Williams. I think you'll have a lot of fun with those. Once again, here is Natalie Trundy as Lisa. She doesn't have a lot of dialogue in this movie, and she was actually in, I think, she was in all the sequels to Planet of the Apes, but she was not in the original. In Beneath, she played Albina. In Escape, she played Dr. Stephanie Branton, so we actually see her without the ape makeup in both of those movies. And she actually plays the same character of Lisa in both Conquest and Battle, which, of course, immediately follows this. And she didn't do much after that. I mean, in her early years, she was actually in Mr. Hobbs Takes a Vacation with James Stewart and Maureen O'Hara. And her last movie was actually another Arthur P. Jacobs production of Huckleberry Finn. He actually did musical versions of both Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. And I got to say, bless the man's heart, because, Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer are like American classics of literature. If only they would get like a proper screen treatment. And what I mean by that is Huckleberry Finn is not a children's story. It's a satire on American society in the 19th century. And it needs to be treated as such. I mean, to tell you the truth, I mean, we need like a PG-13 Huckleberry Finn, maybe even an R-rated Huckleberry Finn, to actually do that book justice. I mean, Tom Sawyer, you can make that a little bit edgy, a little bit violent with the Injun Joe stuff. But those musical versions, I mean, I've watched them. They're not terrible. I mean, and J. Lee Thompson, who directed both Conquest and Battle for the Planet of the Apes, he also directed Huckleberry Finn. I don't think he directed Tom Sawyer though, for the Tom Sawyer movie though. No, he just did Huckleberry Finn. Yeah. And just to let everybody know, I did mention the important films by J. Lee Thompson, but if you want to see some others after the Planet of the Apes movies, you have The White Buffalo, 1977, The Greek Tycoon, 1978, The Passage, which I heard is not really any good, a Casablanca remake called Cabo Blanco. Yes, that is an actual movie that came out in 1980 with Charles Bronson, if I believe. Yeah, Charles Bronson and Jason Robards. And he also did the slasher film Happy Birthday to Me, 10 to Midnight, 1983, King Solomon's Mines, the infamous canon version of King Solomon's Mines, which stars Richard Chamberlain and Sharon Stone. And yes, this is the infamous production where Menahem Golan basically said, "I want that Stone woman." He was referring to Kathleen Turner from Romancing the Stone, but instead they brought in Sharon Stone because that's who they thought he was referring to as that Stone woman. And everybody on the set in Zimbabwe hated working with Sharon Stone on that. But that was one of his last films. And he also did Murphy's Law, Firewalker with Chuck Norris, Death Wish 4, The Crackdown, Messenger of Death, which also had, wait a minute, was that? That's Charles Bronson as well. He made a lot of Charles Bronson movies in the latter part of his career. And his last movie was another Bronson film called Kinjite Forbidden Subjects in 1989, all Cannon films. So yeah, I mean, the latter part of his career was with Cannon Films in the 1980s, and he ended up retiring at that point. Passed away at the age of 88 in 2002. Now, look, he's interviewed actually also on, he's not in the featurette that's on the Blu-ray because I should talk about the physical media here real quick. The Blu-ray version of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, it has the unrated cut and the theatrical cut. And like I said, I am watching the theatrical one. It also has a brand new featurette called Riots and Revolutions, Confronting the Times featurette. There's also a vintage featurette called The Look Behind the Planet of the Apes. There's also a vintage 1 minute of footage with J. Lee Thompson as he is directing Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. Theatrical trailer, gallery, press book, and 3 other galleries, advertising, lobby cards, and behind the scenes. But if you want an interview with J. Lee Thompson where he talks about the 2 Planet of the Apes movies that he did, then you should seek out Behind the Planet of the Apes. This was a documentary that was commissioned by 20th Century Fox and AMC back in 1999. So this was before the Tim Burton remake came out. And it has some great interviews. It's narrated by Roddy McDowell. And it has some great interviews with the directors, Charlton Heston, and many, many other key players with Planet of the Apes, including John Chambers, the makeup artist, and of course, and of course the director's wife, Natalie Trundy. So, and yeah, I had not watched the Roddy McDowell interview on here yet. It's supposed to have like 3 hours of bonus features. I still haven't dived in those yet. I just watched the documentary Behind the Planet of the Apes, which is really, really good. But all the Blu-rays have their own featurettes for the films as well, which is pretty cool. Right behind me on the left-hand corner is the box set for Planet of the Apes with, obviously, Conquest has been taken out. But yeah, trust me that all the Blu-rays for the Ape series are worth picking up. Even if you're a newcomer, I think you will get a lot out of these movies and the history and the making of the movies behind them all. Now, one actor who we haven't talked about yet is actually Inspector Culp, and we just missed him. I mean, but he's played by an actor named Severn Darden, and he was an American comedian and one of the founding members of the Second City Chicago-based comedy troupe, as well as its predecessor, the Compass Players. And he played the human leader Culp in both this film and Battle of the Planet of the Apes. So he will be back for the next one. We will see him come back along with Natalie Trudy and Roddy McDowall. His live comedy improv skit under the character of Walter van der Vogelweed was influential with two generations of comic performers. And he passed away in 1995 at the age of 65. But some of the other films he did were The President's Analyst in 1967, The Mad Room in 1969. Here he is on screen right here with the beard. Okay, this is Severn Darden right here. So thankfully we didn't miss him. Actually, I'm going to do a timestamp here real quick. We are approximately 53 minutes. We're approximately 53 minutes into Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and we have about 33 minutes left to go. Yeah, this is a very short movie. It's only 88 minutes, which is why I kind of felt, you know what, I got to do Rise. I got to do Rise right after Conquest, man. I really do. Oh, now this is the most disturbing scene in the movie, is the torture sequence, the electric shock torture sequence, where we see Caesar being wired down here and everything. So yeah, anyway, that is Severn Darden. He was also in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? In 1969. I've never seen that movie, but it has Jane Fonda and Red Buttons and Michael Cera, and it's supposed to be very good. I mean, it's directed by Sidney Pollack, but I've never seen it, unfortunately. He was also in Vanishing Point, 1971. Werewolves on Wheels, also 1971. Cisco Pike with Chris Christopherson. Play It As It Lays, Dirty Little Billy, which I'll be doing that later in the year in November, December, which is the writing and directing debut of Stan Dragoti. And that'll be in November or December of this year when I do a audio commentary for Dirty Little Billy. He was also in the very infamous film Day of the Dolphin in 1973, Jackson County Jail, 1976, Victory at Entebbe, which is the very first movie of a series of movies that was made about Idi Amin, the Operation Entebbe, the raid on the Entebbe airport in Uganda, and the freeing of Israeli hostages on July 4th of 1976. That was the first movie that was made, and he was part of an ensemble for that. But last but not least, what you should recognize Severn Darden from. Odd name, I know, but I'm getting it right here. His last three movies were actually 1985's Real Genius with Val Kilmer, and 1986 in Back to School. And that's very interesting because he has a very funny bit in Back to School. That was a Rodney Dangerfield comedy where he plays this zoology professor, and in his room he wants Rodney Dangerfield to play these videotapes for chimpanzees. So I don't know if that was intentional. I have no idea if that was an intentional joke on the Back to School writers to comment on his role in Conquest and Battle, but I wouldn't be surprised. And Rodney Dangerfield eventually gets bored trying to show him the videos and everything, trying to show the chimpanzees the videos. So he just orders pizza. And Severn Darden, as the professor, he comes in and he notices them all just enjoying the pizza. And Rodney's like, hey, it's no sweat. They're taking a break. That's all. So a lot of people remember him from that. Unfortunately, his last film is actually awful. god awful. It's the 1988 movie The Telephone, starring Whoopi Goldberg. And even if you were going to ask Whoopi Goldberg what the worst film she ever did was in her career, she would probably say The Telephone. And I don't think anything else needs to be said on that. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Back to School. Yes, I remember him in that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, great little comic bit that he did in that movie. Mm-hmm. You know what? If you have Blu-ray, go ahead and get the Blu-ray set. Now, there has not been any word whatsoever as far as a 4K set is concerned. I have not heard absolutely nothing from Disney on that. Like I said, I mean, if you were going to get the old Blu-ray box set, I think you can get it for a really good price. And but I should mention the news. I'm going to go ahead and mention the news right here, which you're probably all not aware of. But the title for the brand new Planet of the Apes movie to follow Rise, Dawn, and War has just been set in stone, and that it's going to be called The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So that is going to be the new movie going into production next month. Probably under 20th Century Studios, which is the distribution arm that Disney created to give to the 20th Century Fox projects that were not realized yet. So the next Planet of the Apes movie is officially going to be The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. They do have a director attached. They do have writers who have a completed script, and they're going to start shooting it in August of this year, like I said. So there you go. There you go. So now the revolution has begun. Yes. Caesar has survived the electric torture that was being brought down upon him, and now he is on his way to with his fellow apes to take over. And like I said, this was a very heavily all influenced by the Watts incident in 1965, which I should go ahead and bring that up right now. Yeah, it took place in the Watts neighborhood and the surrounding areas of Los Angeles from August 11th to 16th of 1965. Marquette Fry, a 21-year-old black man, was pulled over for drunken driving after he failed a field sobriety test. Officers attempted to arrest him. Marquette resisted arrest with assistance from his mother, Rena Fry. A physical confrontation ensued in which Marquette was struck in the face with a baton. Meanwhile, a crowd of onlookers had gathered. Rumors spread that the police had kicked a pregnant woman who was present at the scene. 6 days of civil unrest followed, motivated in part by allegations of police abuse. Nearly 14,000 members of the California Army National Guard helped suppress the disturbance, which resulted in 34 deaths, as well as over $40 million in property damage. It was the city's worst unrest until the Rodney King riots in 1992. But yeah, a lot of this was caused by, well, like I said, the riot had begun on Thursday, August 12th. There was a meeting between the police and the local black community leaders, which had failed. And late that day, Chief Parker called for the assistance of the California National Army Guard. But Chief Parker believed the riots assembled in an insurgency, compared it to fighting the Viet Cong, and decreed a paramilitary response to the disorder. Governor Pat Brown declared that law enforcement was confronting, quote, guerrillas fighting with gangsters. The rioting intensified, and on Friday, August 13th, about 2,300 National Guardsmen joined the police in trying to maintain order on the streets. Sergeant Ben Dunn said, the streets of Watts resembled an all-out war zone in some far-off foreign country. It bore no resemblance to the United States of America. The first not-related death occurred on the night of August 13th when a black civilian was killed in the crossfire during a shootout between the police and the rioters. Over the next few days, rioting had then spread throughout other areas, including Pasadena, Tacoma, Monrovia, Long Beach, and even as far as San Diego, although they were very minor in comparison to Watts. About 200 guardsmen and the LAPD were sent to assist the Long Beach Police Department in controlling the unruly crowd. By nightfall on Saturday, 16,000 law enforcement personnel had been mobilized and patrolled the city. Blockades were established, and warning signs were posted throughout the riot zones, threatening the use of deadly force. One sign warned residents to turn left or get shot. Angered over the police response, residents of Watts engaged in a full-scale battle against the first responders. Rioters tore up sidewalks and bricks to hurl at guardsmen and police and to smash their vehicles. Those actively participating in the riots started physical fights with police, blocked Los Angeles Fire Department firefighters from using fire hoses on protesters and burning buildings, or stopped and beat white motorists while yelling racial slurs in the area. Arson and looting were largely confined to local white-owned stores and businesses that were said to have caused resentment in the neighborhood due to low wages and high prices for local workers. To quell the riots, Chief Parker initiated a policy of mass arrest. Following the deployment of National Guardsmen, a curfew was declared for a vast region of south central Los Angeles. In addition to the Guardsmen, 934 LAPD officers and 718 officers from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department were deployed during the rioting. Watts and all black majority areas in Los Angeles were put under the curfew. All residents outside of their homes in the affected areas after 8 p.m. were subject to arrest. Eventually, nearly 3,500 people were arrested, primarily for curfew violations. By the morning of Sunday, August 15th, the riots had largely been quelled. Over the course of 6 days, between 31,000 and 35,000 adults participated in the riots, and around 70,000 people were sympathetic but were not active. Over the 6 days, there were 34 deaths, over 1,000 injuries, 3,400 arrests, and over $440 million in property damage. Many white Americans were tearful of the breakdown of social order in Watts, especially since white motorists were being pulled over by rioters in nearby areas and assaulted. Many in the black community, however, believed the rioters were taking a part in a, quote, uprising against an oppressive system, which is exactly what we're seeing right here on the screen, and hopefully in real life soon. I don't know. I mean, the Supreme Court has been doing a lot of horrible things in recent weeks, and I don't know. I don't know when the police when people are just going to start saying enough is enough. But Conquest, with the ending, the very controversial ending in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, it kind of gives us one of two options. We could either ease back on the violence and try to come to some kind of peaceful resolution and have some kind of hope, or we can go all the way in terms of a revolution and grab power back from the people that have taken it away from the American public, which is, of course, those in the American government and their owner donors, their corporate donors, who virtually do everything they say. Basically, they're lapdogs. They do not listen to anything that the American people say. They only listen to their owner donors. If only they would get money out of politics. I mean, it would be, I think it would be a really great thing for the government if we got money out of politics, because it causes all this deep corruption. I mean, absolutely deep corruption. And now what we're looking at now is basically a fascistic state, which is very scary. It's very doomsday. I'm aware of that, but we are witnessing it right now. I mean, and this has only gotten worse in the past few years. I mean, with the pandemic aggravating everything, the waxing of gun laws, and the taking away the rights of over 51% of the population. It's getting bad. It's getting very, very bad. Now, the unrated cut on the Blu-ray obviously has a bit more blood and a bit more. It's a bit more graphic with the violence. Let's put it that way. I mean, as I said, the Fox studio was really freaking out at this point because there was a sneak preview of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes where uh, apparently there were parents like dragging their kids out or running out of the theater with their kids and everything just because of how violent the movie had gotten. Uh, but at the same time, I mean, when it comes to the series as a whole, you see this as a sadly very natural progression of events, which started in the original 1968 movie. And when we went back with Escape and we realized that, oh my God, you know, this one ape could change the world and could lead his entire simian population in revolt. You know, it causes scenes like this. This is pretty much not far off of what the Watts riots were like in '65. I'm pretty sure. That's what producer Arthur P. Jacobs and the screenwriter Paul Dean, that was their intention with this movie. And we should talk about Paul Dean real quick because he wrote basically he wrote Escape, he wrote Beneath, Escape, Conquest, and Battle. Rod Serling was responsible for the original screenplay for the first Planet of the Apes movie. And then for Beneath the Planet of the Apes, they brought in Paul Dean, who was a British screenwriter, best known for Goldfinger, the James Bond film Goldfinger, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and Murder on the Orient Express. And he won an Academy Award for Best Story for the 1950 film 7 Days to Noon. And yes, Best Story is a obsolete category now. They haven't had that category in existence since the early 1950s when they went away with it. Yep. They're armed and they're organized. Yep. Armed and organized. Look, and the thing is, I don't blame parents for being intimidated by how violent this movie had gotten in 1972 in the sneak previews, but, you know, like I said, Planet of the Apes is one of the movies that matured science fiction because of this kind of social commentary. So, I mean, like I said, Fox just got cold feet. They got cold feet when it came to this brutally violent climax. And the unrated version, I mean, watching the unrated version, they basically add a few lines to Roddy McDowell's final speech, which is coming up here in just a few minutes. They add some lines to soften the blow of his final speech in this movie. And they also reverse some footage to show the apes not necessarily attacking, but basically calming down and retracting from the attack. Because in the original unrated cut of this movie, Governor Breck, played by Governor Breck, played by Don Murray, gets murdered by the apes. They basically basically use a bunch of rifles and headbutt him until he's dead. It's funny. One movie I saw again, not very recently, was Platoon, and I'm reminded of the bit in Platoon when they're in the village, and they keep attacking this Vietnamese boy, and Charlie Sheen, he shoots a bunch of bullets, making the boy jump up and down, and then he turns around and leaves, and then another one of the army soldiers decides to just kill him at that point by just headbutting his rifle in his head. And when he gets done, he says, "Wow, I've never seen brains come out like that before." It's brutal stuff. But like I said, this was made at a time when the Vietnam War was still going on. In 1972, the Vietnam War was still very much in full swing. And I hope you all can join me on the 4th of July at 6:30 p.m. Because I'll be doing an audio commentary at that time for Born on the 4th of July from director Oliver Stone. That will be at 6:30 p.m. on Monday nights. And it will be before the fireworks. I set that time 6:30 p.m. specifically to make sure it's done before the fireworks start. So yeah, Monday I'll be doing Born on the 4th of July, based on the book by Ron Kovic and directed by Oliver Stone. Let's see. I think I pretty much covered. Yeah, I pretty much covered all the cast members at this point. Okay, do a timestamp real quick. 1 hour and 13 minutes and 30 seconds. 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 30 seconds. So we have approximately 13 minutes left. Now, the story goes, like I said, that parents were dragging their kids out during the sneak previews for Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And so even though they did not have the budget to change the ending to the movie, they basically just modified it by having Roddy McDowell do ADR, which you can tell when you have close-ups of his eyes. They loop that dialogue in to soften the violent blow of the ending here. Now, which version do I prefer? I prefer the unrated version, obviously. Even though the difference is, it's really only that ending. It's really only that ending. Now, apparently, there was supposed to be a alternate beginning as well. Conquest is the only Planet of the Apes film without a pre-title sequence. The film script and novelization describes a nighttime pre-title scene where police on night patrol shoot an escaping ape and discover that his body is covered with welts and bruises as evidence of severe abuse. In a later scene, Governor Breck refers to the ape that physically assaulted his master, thereby prompting McDonald to report that the escape must have been the result of severe mistreatment. The scene appears in the first chapter of John Jakes' novelization of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and in the Marvel Comics adaptation of the film in the early 1970s, both of which were probably based directly on the screenplay and not the final edit of the actual film, which we're watching right now, obviously. An article in the summer 1972 issue of Cine Fantastique, Volume 2, Issue 2 by Dale Winugura shows and describes the scene being shot, but it is unknown why it was cut. And the Blu-ray extended cut does not contain, it does not contain this pre-credit opening. Let's see. Screenwriter Paul Den, who wrote and co-wrote the sequels, said in interviews with Cine Fantastique, quoted in the Planet of the Apes Chronicles by Paul Woods, that the story he was writing had a circular timeline. Quote, "The whole thing has become a very logical development in the form of a circle. I have a complete chronology of time circle mapped out, and when I start a new script, I check every supposition I make against the chart to see if it is correct to use it. While I was out there in California, Arthur Jacobs said he thought this would be the last, so I fitted it together so that it fitted with the beginning of Apes #1, so that the wheel had come full circle and one could stop there quite happily, I think. I think in it with a question mark. Yeah. I mean, like I said, Battle is worth seeing just for Rodney McDowell. And we'll get to Battle next year when we talk about it in probably June of 2023 for the commentary when it comes at that time. But this is great. This is great stuff. I love it. They're just slaughtering all these humans. Like I said in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, when we have the upgraded special effects, I just think that the story is better served in Rise than it is in Conquest. But that is just me. Here again, I think this is a good entry in the series, but just barely. And what I mean by that is, here again, the two weak entries I think are Beneath and Battle. Battle a lot more than Beneath. I mean, Beneath at least has a budget. Beneath at least has a budget, but then again, it's also so traumatizing, as I said before in the points I made earlier. The final showdown between Homo sapien and Simian right here. Rodney McDowell is just on fire. He's really on fire, even with through all that makeup. I mean, he's just wonderful here. I mean, I forgot to mention that Rodney McDowell, he was hired by 20th Century Fox in the 40s. I mean, he had been around with the studio for a long, long time. So he was well known, very well known around the 20th Century Fox studio in the 40s and 50s. And his first movie, believe it or not, was actually way back in 1938 called Murder in the Family. But the movie that kind of shot him to stardom was as Hugh Morgan in the Best Picture winning How Green Was My Valley. And yes, this is the movie in 1941 which won Best Picture over Citizen Kane, much to the consternation of film historians everywhere. But Roddy McDowell just steals every scene he's in that movie. He was only 13 at the time. I mean, he was just a very talented child actor that managed to transition to films as an adult with almost no issues. But he was also in The White Cliffs of Dover in 1944, Macbeth, 1948, Kidnapped, Tuna Clipper in 1949, The Big Country, 1958. The Longest Day is a landmark film from Darryl F. Zanuck and 20th Century Fox in 1962. It's this war epic about D-Day, long before Saving Private Ryan came out. And he plays a private in that movie. He was also in Cleopatra for 20th Century Fox, The Greatest Story Ever Told, The Loved One, That Darn Cat, which is one of my personal favorites, Lord Love a Duck, which is a black comedy from 1966, The Cool Ones, and of course he did Tamlin and Pretty Maids all in a row when he wasn't available for Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And he was also in Bedknobs and Broomsticks in 1971, which I did an audio commentary on last year as well. He also did Cat from Outer Space, Circle of Iron, The Black Hole, Class of 1984, where he plays a teacher who's so paranoid about a high school that he teaches at that he has a gun in his briefcase. Yeah. Not going to go any further than that. Let's see, The Grass Harp, 1995. And his very last movie was actually, he gave the voice of Mr. Soil in A Bug's Life, the Pixar movie from 1998. So that was his very last role before his death in 1999. I actually remember watching the Academy Awards when that year when they did the in memoriam sequence, and Roddy McDowall was the very last actor that they showed, and he was clearly, an absolutely beloved figure in Hollywood for over 50 years, on the stage and the screen. And like I said, if all of you get a chance to watch Behind the Planet of the Apes, he narrates that. He also narrated the Vertigo documentary for Universal. So, and yeah, I mean, well, and a lot of people remember him from Fright Night. I forgot to mention Fright Night, written and directed by Tom Holland, where he has to go after Chris Sarandon, who's a vampire. But yeah, very long, distinguished career on the stage and the screen, and still remains a formidable figure in entertainment now. I mean, a lot of people still remember Roddy McDowall, and I'm very glad of that, because he really. Here again, check out the film he directed, Tam Lin, the one he did when he couldn't do Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Check out Tam Lin, very underseen. Very, very underseen movie, very stylish, and very Roddy McDowall, from what I understand. I mean, it's very much who he was, and it was his one film as a director. So yeah, right here, we see the reversing of basically the reversal of the footage. See how they're holding up the guns as if they were going to stop attacking him, although in the unrated cut they actually do attack and kill him, which is the major difference between both cuts of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. But here we have, her character saying, "No, don't do it, Caesar." And here we have this added dialogue. Where now we will put away our hatred. We will put down our weapons. We have passed through the night of the fires. Those who are masters are now our servants. And we who are not human. This is all ADR, all automatic dialogue replacement. And I mean, it's pretty seamless. I mean, to give Fox credit, this is all actually pretty seamless. The question is, which ending would you prefer? Do you prefer the unrated cut where they actually murder the governor and they fully announce plans for domination right here? And that's the thing. The endings kind of reflect how you feel about, I mean, well, who are you rooting for in general? Are you rooting for the apes? I mean, I certainly feel for the apes a lot more than the humans do. But that's why we have this alternate point of view with McDonald's character played by Harry Rhodes right here. But Conquest, in closing, Conquest was, a fairly decent hit for 20th Century Fox when it came out in June of 1972. The reviews were very mixed, and they remain very, very mixed. Just as a taste right here, Howard Thompson of the New York Times wrote that J. Lee Thompson's direction fiercely propels the action in a compact chromium and glass setting. And wait till you see that last battle royale. Arthur Murphy of Roddy wrote McDowall is extremely good, as usual, in simian character, and Thompson's staging keeps the pace very lively. But Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune only gave it 2.5 out of 4 stars, saying excellent in the first half. Concluding action sequences went on too long without any original slashing, maiming, or setting on fire. But there are many people that think that Conquest is the best one since the original. And I'm not going to dispute that. I prefer Escape personally, but there we go. There's Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. At any rate, we're going to take a 5-6 minute break. I'm going to set up Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, and we'll be back. But I will be paused on the 20th Century Fox logo for Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Please give me 5 to 7 minutes. Be right back. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I am paused on the 20th Century Fox logo for Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And like I said, this movie, I'll start it in about 60 seconds here. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is the movie that made me a fan of the franchise. This is the movie that actually caused me to become a fan. It wasn't the 1968 original, and it certainly wasn't the 2001 Tim Burton remake. It was neither of those films. As a matter of fact, it was, in fact, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Yeah, so Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So at any rate, we'll get started here at 3, 2, 1. Now, why not we get started? Just to say hi, Daniel Shine in the chat, and Uncle Beer in the chat. I love the koala bear. That's wonderful. But anyway, okay, paused on 20th Century Fox logo. We will start 3, 2, 1, and play. And here we are starting Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which is, in fact, the film that made me a fan of the franchise. This is the movie that did it for me. Now, let's start talking about Rise of the Planet of the Apes from the very beginning. What ultimately inspired this movie, I think, more than anything else. In 1973, June of 1973, we had the very last Planet of the Apes movie come out called Battle of the Planet of the Apes, until the remake in 2000. So for nearly 30 years, the Planet of the Apes franchise had been dormant for that time. There was, at one point, Peter Jackson had come over to make a Planet of the Apes movie, and that fell through because he realized that the head of the studio had no idea that Roddy McDowall was in the original films. That's wow. I mean, Roddy McDowall being a fixture at that studio for so long, and the heads of the studio just had no idea who he was. So Peter Jackson was like, "Yeah, this is not going to work." So he went off and did the Frighteners for Robert Zemeckis instead. Which now has of course, a huge cult audience. But in November of 1973, approximately 5 months after Battle of the Planet of the Apes come out, Nim Chimpsky was born. Now, he was a chimpanzee, and the study of he was the subject of an extended study of animal language acquisition at Columbia University. The project was led by Herbert S. Terrace, with the linguistic analysis headed up by psycholinguist Thomas Bever. Within the context of a scientific study, Chimpsky was named as a pun on linguist Noam Chomsky, who posits that humans are quote unquote wired to develop language. And as part of a study intended to challenge Chomsky's thesis that only humans have language, beginning at 2 weeks old, Nim was raised by a family in a home environment by human surrogate parents. Actually, he was being raised in a hippie household. A personal friend of Herbert S. Terrace was looking out for him in a brownstone in New York City. And the mother who was taking care of Nim evidently did everything from letting him smoke weed to do breastfeeding. This is all true. I'm not making any of this up. Nim Chimpsky was in fact a chimpanzee that was stolen from his mother literally right when he was born. And he was put in this human environment to be looked at after and to find out if in fact that can chimpanzees learn sign language and communicate with humans. That's essentially what the study was all about. But let's just say that the head of the project, Herbert S. Terrace, used it all as an excuse to actually sleep with college students. So let's put it this way: the analysis was taken at one of the heads of the college had a vast estate, and Nim Chimpsky went out there with one of the college students that Herbert Terrace was sleeping around with. And what they soon discovered, naturally, was that as Nim was getting older, he was getting more aggressive with his chimpanzee-like nature. So naturally, there were a few attacks against other human beings to showcase dominance. And eventually, the study concluded that Nim was unable of forming sentences, even though he could sign exceptionally well and he can communicate with humans. His caretakers, said that all of them said that he was exceptionally smart and very, very social. But the problem is, of course, he was being owned by people that were using him for exploitation and for obviously just to make money. It wasn't so much money and sex. Let's put it that way. It wasn't necessarily a legitimate study. And several years ago, in fact, in 2011, when Rise of the Planet of the Apes hit theaters, it was only one brief second. And like I said, on screen here's James Franco talking about the chimpanzee that they're going to bring in called Bright Eyes. Who is obviously not very happy right now. Just one second. I just want to make sure I got this right. So Rise of the Planet of the Apes came out on August 5th, 2011. And this documentary called Project Nim came out at Sundance in January of that year, and I believe it was given a wide release in July. Well, a limited release, excuse me, because of the fact it was a documentary film. But it came from the Academy Award winner James Marsh, who had made Man on Wire, which many of you are probably more familiar with as The Walk, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and directed by Robert Zemeckis. Oh, man. Yeah, this movie, I mean, it gets exciting from the get-go. I mean, we have the brief scene in Africa where we see the chimpanzees being stolen. And obviously, this sadly still goes on today. To be used exactly for purposes like this. It's science and profit mingled together. See, they're trying to find they're trying to discover a cure for Alzheimer's disease, which, I mean, even when I first saw this in 2011, I can understand why people would want, medication which could handle Alzheimer's disease. I can totally understand that, but it's not going to it's really deep down, it's really not going to get any better for the person, because, the brain, once it starts to die off, it's going to start to die off. I mean, there's not much you can do about that. At least, I mean, the fact is, I mean, we shouldn't be using chimpanzees to be doing these type of experiments on. And of course, Nim, going back to the story of Nim, he was very much a victim of that, because when he was when the professor was pretty much done with Nim, he sold him back to the Institute for Primal Studies in Oklahoma, where he struggled to adapt after being treated like a human child for the first decade of his life. He had also never previously met another chimp and had to get used to them. When Terrace made his one and only visit to see Nim after a year at the Institute of Primal Studies, Nim sprung to Terrace immediately after seeing him, visibly shaking with excitement. Nim also showed the progress he had made during Project Nim as he immediately began conversing in sign language with Terrace. Nim retreated back to a depressed state after Terrace had left, never to return to see Nim again. Nim developed friendships with several of the workers at the Institute of Primal Studies and learned a few more signs, including a sign named Stone, Smoke, Time, Now, which indicated that Nim wanted to smoke marijuana. The Institute later sold Nim to the Laboratory for Experimental Medicine and Surgery in Primates, or LEMSIP, a pharmaceutical animal testing laboratory managed by New York University. At LEMSIP, Nim was confined to a wire cage, slated to be used for hepatitis vaccine studies. Technicians caring for the chimps noted that Nim and other chimps from the Institute continued to make sign language gestures in a desperate attempt to communicate with the people they are now entrusted with. After efforts to free him, Nim was purchased by the Black Beauty Ranch, operated by the Fund for Animals, the group led by Cleveland Armory in Texas. While Nim's quality of life improved at the Black Beauty Ranch, Nim lived primarily in isolation inside a pen. He began to show hostility that included throwing TVs and killing a dog. Nim's behavior and overall well-being improved when other chimpanzees, several from the LEMSIP, joined Nim inside his pen after about a decade at the Black Beauty Ranch. Nim continued to show signs of the sign language he'd learned decades ago whenever a former trainer at the Institute for Primal Studies went to visit him. Nim died on March 10th, 2000 at the age of 26 from a heart attack. And the story of Nim and other language learning animals is told in Eugene Linden's book, Silent Partners, The Legacy of the Ape Language Experiments. And also that documentary called Project Nim, which is in many ways a perfect prequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. In fact, I would almost say if you are a fan of this movie, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, as I am, I adore Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I mean, like I said, it made me a fan of the franchise, but you must check out that documentary, Project Nim. It is very powerful, and it's brilliant. It's one of the best documentaries I've seen in the past 3 decades. It's that good, but it's also very hard to watch because of the fact that we actually see Nim in actual footage at LEMSIP, and it's impossibly horrible to describe. I mean, it's just automatically you just want the chimps to escape and kill all the humans inside the laboratory. I mean, it's that bad. It's really, really that bad. But Nim was the inspiration for Caesar in this particular Planet of the Apes story. This Caesar, in many ways, is only in name only with the Caesar from Conquest, the Planet of the Apes, and Battle. The character is actually much more different, and I may even go so far as to say much more defined, because this is really a story told from Caesar's point of view. Entirely from Caesar's point of view. We don't have any other additional points of view in this movie. James Franco is really just he's the human lead, and yes, he's the one that's top billed, but this is not his story. This is not his character's story. And we're going to talk more about James Franco later. I mean, I don't blame anybody who doesn't want to return to Rise of the Planet of the Apes just because of him. But we'll talk about James Franco a bit later. In the role in his father right here, played by John Lithgow. John Lithgow has been, a favorite for, many, many decades. I mean, I still remember being a kid and seeing him as the evil toy maker in Santa Claus the movie. Way back in 1985. Originally, he was supposed to play Doc Brown. He was actually the original choice for Doc Brown for the Back to the Future series, and I think a pretty good choice. I mean, until Christopher Lloyd, came on the scene and everything, but John Lithgow is still very much with us. He is now 76 years old, and oh man, I mean, just to name some of his performances here, I mean. His first film was Obsession, the Brian De Palma film Obsession in 1976. All That Jazz, directed by Bob Fosse, was his second film. Then Blowout, another Brian De Palma film starring John Travolta. Then he was in The World According to Garp with Robin Williams, where he was nominated for an Academy Award for playing let me make sure I get this right. Well, he was nominated for an Academy Award for World According to Gump, but he played a transgendered male in that. If I screwed that up, I apologize, but he does play a trans person in that, and that's pretty amazing considering that's 1982, and he got an Academy Award nomination. I mean, absolutely worth seeing. Terms of Endearment. I remember him from Terms of Endearment because he has an affair with Deborah Winger's character in that, because she's married to Jeff Daniels. And and John Lithgow plays like I think he works in a bank, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he works in a bank and he has an affair with Deborah Winger, because Jeff Daniels is having an affair. And there's a very sweet scene where they meet in a grocery store, and John Lithgow helps her out when she's short on paying for her groceries. Obviously, her husband has not been giving her enough money to spend on the kids that they've been having. So, but that was the Best Picture winner of 1983. He was also in Twilight Zone, the movie. Footloose, played the father in Footloose. The Adventures of Buckaroo Bonsai Across the Eighth Dimension, which is where the producers of Back to the Future got the idea to get John Lithgow for that. And Harry and the Hendersons, L.A. Story, Raising Cain. He's worked with Brian De Palma a number of times, actually. Life and Death of Peter Sellers, Kinsey, Dreamgirls, Confessions of a Shopaholic. And, of course, he's most well known from his television sitcom Third Rock from the Sun, which was a massive hit in the 1990s. And he was actually recently, he was in the Pet Sematary remake, which I liked. There were a lot of fans of the original Pet Sematary that really dumped on the remake. I actually really, really liked it, and I like John Lithgow in it. So he's still doing great work. And he's certainly perfectly fine right here as James Franco's father suffering from Alzheimer's, and he gives him this injection which will hopefully curb the effects. Caesar's looking on, observing everything. And that's the thing. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, this is a movie that belongs to Andy Serkis. This is his movie. This is not James Franco's movie. This is Andy Serkis's movie. I think even in 2011, people were well aware that, basically, James Franco is the one that sets the story in motion. But, the real hero of the story is, of course, Caesar. And unlike Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, where he's basically with a circus for the first 18 years of his life, here he actually grows up in a suburban neighborhood, just as Nim did back in 1974. And these effects by Weta Digital are just amazing. Even 11 years later, they still really hold up. Should talk about the effects here. As the apes in Rise were meant to be real, the producers decided to not use actors in suits, obviously. After considering real apes, instead, Weta Digital created the apes digitally in almost every case through performance capture. Now, let's explain what performance or motion capture is. It's the process of recording the movement of objects or people. It is used in military, entertainment, sports, medical applications, and for validation of computer vision and robots. In filmmaking and video game development, it refers to recording actions of human actors and using that information to animate digital character models in 2D or 3D computer animation. When it includes face and figures or captures subtle expressions, it is often referred to as performance capture. In many fields, motion capture is sometimes called motion tracking, but in filmmaking and games, motion tracking usually refers to match moving. Camera movements can also be motion captured so that a virtual camera in the scene will pan, tilt, or dolly around the stage, driven by a camera operator while the actor is performing. At the same time, the motion capture system can capture the camera and props as well as the actor's performance. This allows the computer-generated characters, images, and sets to have the same perspective as the video images from the camera. A computer processes the data and displays the movements of the actor, providing the desired camera positions in terms of objects in the set, retroactively obtaining camera movement data from the captured footage known as match moving or camera tracking. And so for the first 5 Planet of the Apes movies, we relied on these John Chambers makeup and masks. And and by the last 2 films, I mean, those masks were becoming really prevalent in the background. But then we had the Tim Burton version in 2001, which was right after the death of Nim, where Fox was looking to reboot the series in some way. And Tim Burton was like the hottest guy in the universe at that point after he had done Batman and, a lot of other big hits. So, of course, Tim Burton seemed like the logical choice, I guess, for a Planet of the Apes movie. I don't know if I would agree with that. In fact, in retrospect, he seemed like the worst choice. I mean, I don't know. Tim Burton actually said that he would rather commit suicide than make a sequel to his 2001 Planet of the Apes. And even though there were some nice little nods, I guess, to Peter Boy's novel, the truth of the matter is that is not a good movie. I can't say, I think I'd rather watch the Tim Burton remake than Battle of the Planet of the Apes, to be perfectly honest, although that's a very low bar. That's a very, very low bar. I mean, Planet of the Apes is just, it's the only Planet of the Apes movie I don't own, and I don't plan to ever own it. I think enough needs to be said about that. But I also don't own the live-action series from 1974 that was only around for 13 episodes, nor the animated series from 1975. And then, of course, in early 1974, 20th Century Fox actually had a Go Ape campaign where you can go see all 5 movies at once at the theater. So you were basically at the theater all day, and pretty much your food was basically popcorn and candy bars, and you would just watch all the Planet of the Apes movies in one day. Now, that sounds like a lot of fun, if you ask me. But yeah, here we are at the California Redwoods. Yeah, this movie, just right off the bat, especially, compared to Conquest, is the scope of Rise. I mean, the scope of this movie is just much more. I mean, I like the fact that it's set in San Francisco, and I like the fact that we have the San Francisco Bridge and the trolley cars and the redwoods and everything. Far cry from the slightly futuristic city in Conquest. And we also haven't mentioned, of course, Frida Pinto, right here, who is between James Franco and John Lithgow, and is going to be our it's a thankless role. I mean, she's sweet, she's cute, and she does what the role requires, but it's a thankless role. I mean, really, I mean, she serves to basically just be James Franco's girlfriend and to let him know, hey, if you don't stop this experimenting with this virus or whatever, this relationship ain't gonna last. But I still like her in this movie. I mean, even though she's rather underutilized, but she's a Indian actress who started out because of Slumdog Millionaire, the Best Picture winner of 2008, which was directed by Danny Boyle and written by Simon Beaufoy of Train Spotting and Life Less Ordinary fame. Yeah, I mean, and she was the female lead of Slumdog, so that was a huge step for her. What's interesting about her career when I read up on it was that she's not really made a movie in her native country yet. I mean, she basically started doing American films, and although the Indian press has credited Pinto with breaking the stereotypical image of an Indian woman in foreign language films, she has been a lesser known figure in Indian cinema and has rarely been featured in prominent productions in India. Along with her film career, she promotes humanitarian causes and is vocal about women's empowerment. Yes. So yeah, I'm a Frida Pinto fan. I'll say that. I mean, she's definitely been in some good films. I should see some more of them. See, her last movie, she's going to be in a movie coming out this year called Mr. Malcolm's List, directed by Emma Hawley Jones. And Frida Pinto is actually the star of this movie. It's a period drama about a young woman in 1800s England who helps her friend to get revenge on a suitor who rejected her for failing a requirement on his list of qualifications for a bride. Okay, I'll definitely check that out. I'd rather check that out than any other James Franco movie, I guess, at this point. So yeah, this is all Andy Serkis through the performance capture, and I know that there were people that were, trying to tell the Academy, look, Andy Serkis deserves some kind of Oscar. He deserves some kind of an award for this because this is so groundbreaking how he is able. I mean, like I said, the makeup from the 60s, it worked for those films, but it's dated. And this is obviously something that could have used an upgrade, and man, it got the best upgrade you could imagine right here. Not to take anything away from Rick Baker's makeup work on the Tim Burton remake, because that was actually the best thing about that movie. It was actually the makeup effects by Rick Baker. But here, Weta Digital, they really do showcase that. I mean, it's CGI, but I don't think that it's CGI. That's what works so much about it. I mean, Andy Serkis really does come through these effects, through this motion capture system. His performance shines through, and it's very, very emotional and very moving. He's brilliant. I mean, he's just absolutely brilliant in this film. And believe me when I say there was a lot of people that were like, Andy Serkis deserves something, but I don't think the Academy is ready to go that route when it comes to acting performances, which is kind of a shame. I mean, just like they haven't honored stunts in their entire history, and I think there should be a stuntman Oscar. It's really a shame. It really is a shame. Here, James Franco is explaining to him what happened to his mother, who basically died right after giving birth to Caesar here. Frida Pinto doesn't like what he's saying, obviously, and yeah, time to take him home, definitely. So, look, the truth of the matter is, when I saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes in August of 2011, I saw it in the theater. I wasn't expecting much from this, but it got good reviews, so I decided to check out opening weekend. thank goodness I saw Project Nim before I saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes, because not only did I see the inspiration, but I loved it. And I thought that it was a very powerful inspiration to draw from Nim's life story for this new Caesar story, which, of course, is ultimately about revolution. And I think a lot of people like this movie because of the fact because of the fact it is about revolution. Not many movies showcase this theme, but Rise of the Planet of the Apes is definitely one of them, and it does so in such a exquisitely entertaining way. I mean, the effects are glorious. The performances, pretty much by everybody, are great. I mean, I don't have any objection to any of the actors. I mean, at least not in retrospect. Okay, so how do we? Is it time to get out of the way? Let's get out of the way. Let's get out of the way in terms of James Franco, because, well, look, as people are well aware, James Franco started out in the late 1990s, and he was one of those hot young actors that was getting some pretty legitimate roles. I mean, for somebody of his age. Let's see. His first feature was actually the Drew Barrymore movie Never Been Kissed, which is actually one of Drew Barrymore's best films, believe it or not. He was also in Whatever It Takes in 2000, which, if I'm not mistaken, that was a teen adaptation of Cyrano de Bergerac. Yeah. So not only was he in Never Been Kissed, but was also in a teenage version of Cyrano de Bergerac. Then he was of course, in Spider-Man. He in the Spider-Man trilogy, he plays Harry Osborn, Peter Parker's best friend. He was, of course, in Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3. But he was also in films like Annapolis and The Wicker Man and Knocked Up. Probably his best performance came about in 2010, right before Rise of the Planet of the Apes, when he played Aaron Ralston, the real-life Aaron Ralston, who lost his hand in between two boulders when he becomes stuck for 127 hours. And that's the name of the movie. Directed by, here again, Danny Boyle, and written by Simon Beaufoy. Okay, going back to them again. And then he was in other movies like The Iceman and Loveless, about Linda Lovelace, played Hugh Hefner in that. Yeah. He did have an uncredited cameo in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But unfortunately, after that, like I said, and he did like Sausage Party. I mean, he was very good friends with Joe Rogan. Or, excuse me, not Joe Rogan. The other Rogan, Seth Rogen. Seth, yeah. That was a screw up right there. Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe you might as well be friends with Joe Rogan. I don't know. But yeah, so, but unfortunately, James Franco's reputation has now almost been entirely tarnished due to sexual misconduct and harassment and assault that he committed while at one of the schools that he had founded for acting workshops. And so he just paid off a bunch of court cases to here again, I mean, doing that doesn't necessarily clear your name of that kind of thing. You basically just confess to doing all that and just paid everybody off. But that's essentially what he did. And supposedly he's going to be in 2 more films this year. I mean, his first film since 2019 called The Long Home and Kill the Tsar. So we'll see if the public accepts James Franco now in any capacity, but I mean, who knows? Who knows? And his performance in Rise of the Planet of the Apes is good enough to where I'm almost, at least for this one film, I'm willing to look past James Franco in this role. So, but as far as all his other films, no, not even the Spider-Man trilogy. I don't think I can return to at this point. This is probably going to be the only James Franco movie that I have in my collection from here on out. But anyway, hope everybody out in the chat is doing all right. Let's do a timestamp here real quick. We are approximately 34 minutes into Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And we pretty much covered the meat of what I wanted to talk about with this movie, which is, of course, the Project Nim story and how that became the primary inspiration for the script by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver. And they also draw upon Conquest of the Planet of the Apes in several ways as well. But in many ways, this is just an adaptation of Nim's story. But I think it's one that he absolutely deserves. And boy, I mean, did 20th Century Fox really give him the green light here? And I mean, they had faith. I mean, they actually had faith 10 years after the Tim Burton reboot or remake or whatever you want to call it. They had a lot of faith in Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver to deliver with this movie. Now, the director of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, we haven't mentioned yet. He's a British director by the name of Rupert Wyatt. And he actually became... I have not seen his first film yet. I should have watched it before this, although I was preparing more for Conquest than I was for Rise. But Rupert Wyatt, he had directed a movie in 2008 called The Escapist, which was nominated for a bunch of awards, and it stars Brian Cox, who we also see here as the runner of this facility. He and his son basically run the whole damn facility. And The Escapist was a movie with... Brian Cox is a lifer at a prison and has long accepted that he will never see the outside ever again. When he receives his first letter in 14 years, that is his cherished daughter is a drug addict and near death following an overdose, he starts to think about escaping. He plans an escape with help from Lenny Drake, played by Joseph Fiennes, Brody, played by Liam Cunningham, and Viv Batista, played by Sue Jorg. But when Perry's new cellmate, James Lacey, played by Dominic Cooper, gets noticed by Tony, the brother of the powerful inmate Riza, things get more complicated and lead to Tony's death. When Perry receives the bad news that his daughter has died, his plans change. This is a film called The Escapist, which got a lot of critical notice, but it barely made any money. It only made less than $400,000, but the critics liked it. So evidently, 20th Century Fox and the producers had enough faith in Rupert Wyatt, based on this film called The Escapist, to helm this big budget movie in charge of a franchise. Now, we've seen that can go in the toilet, like when you hire somebody like the director of Chronicle, who later did Fantastic Four. 20th Century Fox did that as well. But the difference is Chronicle was actually a massive independent hit. So, look, I mean, they took a risk with Rupert Wyatt, and he paid off. I mean, the risk paid off with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, because, like I said, this was actually a pretty significant hit in the theater. It was made for $93 million. The budget was $93 million, and it made $482 million. So, and this was a much bigger success than the Tim Burton film ever was. I mean, I don't think the Tim Burton film, I don't even think it broke even, to be perfectly honest. Be thankful you're talking about court dates, though. You're lucky they didn't put that animal down. Man. Oh, what a blow. And, of course, John Lithgow, I mean, very sad and upset that Caesar is gone for obvious reasons, because his Alzheimer's came back with a vengeance and caused him to have that accident. And now Caesar is essentially in an animal prison after living the life of human luxury for most of his life. Exactly what happened to him. But Rupert Wyatt was eventually replaced by the director of Cloverfield of all films, Matt Reeves, who of course just came off of directing the new Batman movie, which I actually really liked. I saw the new movie, The Batman, in the theater in January or February when it came out, and it was great. But Rupert Wyatt did not come back to direct Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Instead, they brought on board Matt Reeves, who had done Cloverfield and Let Me In, the remake of Let the Right One In, which is one of the best vampire movies ever made. And here, let's see. Here we have David Oyelowo. I knew I was going to screw up that last name, so forgive me, okay? David Oyelowo. David Oyelowo, okay. I think that's it. As Will's supervisor here at Genesis. And let's see. I remember when he played Martin Luther King Jr. Just a little bit later after this in Selma. And he got an Academy Award nomination, very well deserved for that, for playing Martin Luther King. But a great, great actor. He was also in The Butler, and he was also in The Help, and Lincoln, and Jack Reacher. Queen of Katwe, which is a chess drama, which is actually wonderful. Makes the perfect double feature with Searching for Bobby Fischer, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, his first movie was actually in 2001 called Dog Eat Dog. And then he was in productions of Raisin in the Sun. And he was also in The Paperboy with Nicole Kidman and Matthew McConaughey. And then, of course, he was in Selma, 2014 Selma, which won him a bunch of awards like the Black Reel Award, the Kermode Award, the Palm Springs Award, a bunch of awards for playing Martin Luther King Jr. And recently he's been in Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway. So, well, now he's part of the Peter Rabbit franchise. So there you go. Oh, he was also in the Cloverfield Paradox. Oh, interesting. Yeah. And here, the guy with the red hair, as you can see, is Tom Felton. Yes, Tom Felton is a British actor, and he plays Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter movies. I got to confess, I've seen a few of the Harry Potter movies in the theaters. I honestly barely remember him in the movies that I saw of the Harry Potter franchise. But yeah, he plays Draco Malfoy, and he's a perfect antagonist here for Caesar. He's horrible. He's absolutely horrible. And I think we actually do our relieved when he's actually killed by Caesar a little bit later here in the movie. But yeah, look at that. I mean, man. I mean, Andy Serkis, man, does he deliver this performance? I'm you know what? I'm sorry. I think I even preferred him in this franchise over Lord of the Rings. To be perfectly honest, I mean, that's just me personally. I mean, yeah, I mean, But aside from the Harry Potter films, Tom Felton has also been in. Well, his first film was actually The Borrowers in 1997. Then he was in Anne and the King in 1999. Then he was in all Harry Potters, but he had a cameo in Get Him to the Greek. And after Rise of the Planet of the Apes, he also did Megan Levy, which is actually a great military drama, which you should all check out with Kate Mara, as she plays a veteran of the Iraq War and her relationship with a combat dog known as Rex, and how she develops PTSD, and she fights to get Rex out of the military to join her later in life. And it's a very powerful, powerful movie. But Tom Felton was also in that, as well as Ophelia, Breaking for Whales, A Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting, and this year he was in a movie called Save the Cinema, directed by Sarah Sugarman. Let's see. He plays third billing next to Jonathan Pryce and Samantha Morton. This came out earlier in the year, actually, Save the Cinema. Liz Evans is a hairdresser and leader of a youth theater in Wales. Started a campaign in 1993 to save the Lyric Theater from closure. She and a local counselor will enlist the help of Steven Spielberg, securing a special premiere for Jurassic Park. Why have I not seen this movie yet? That's a good question. Yeah, this is a movie that exists. It's called Save the Cinema, and it was released by Sky Cinema in January of 2022. Yep. Directed by Sarah Sugarman, and with Tom Felton, of course. Now, Brian Cox, who we saw earlier, and of course he was the star of Rupert Wyatt's first film, The Escapist. I remember Brian Cox when I think I first saw him in Manhunter in 1986, where he plays Hannibal Lecter. Yeah, so he played Dr. Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter in 1986. He only did 2 movies before that, believe it or not. I mean, mostly he's renowned for his stage work. But in 1971, he played Trotsky in Nicholas and Alexandria. And also in 1975, he did a movie called In Celebration. After Manhunter, he did Iron Will, Rob Roy. He was in Braveheart as Argyle Wallace. Chain Reaction, The Glimmer Man, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss the Girls, The Boxer, Desperate Measures, Rushmore, The Corruptor, For Love of the Game, and then finally Super Troopers, which is the film I know him from as Captain John O'Hagan in Super Troopers, and he managed to come back for Super Troopers 2. Which Broken Lizard did a few years ago, which I think I liked it more than most other people. I really liked Super Troopers 2, actually. Okay, but Brian Cox, he was also in The Rookie with Dennis Quaid. The Bourne Identity, he plays Ward Abbott in the Bourne films. Another great franchise. And just to pause real quick, here is Koba, a damaged chimpanzee from so many experimentations, who writes Jacobs on the screen here, who is the name of David Oyolowo's character. Sorry, I love this guy, and I really hate screwing up his last name, but yeah, Jacobs is the name of his character, but also a nice little tip of the hat to producer Arthur P. Jacobs of the original 5 Planet of the Apes movies. But finally, Brian Cox was also in Match Point, Running with Scissors, Zodiac, Red, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Ironclad, Her, Pixels, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and he's still working, and he is going to be his next film is going to be The Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim, which is an anime fantasy film coming out by New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers Animation in 2024. Well, that's certainly news. Yeah. But his latest film is a movie called The Independent, with John Cena, Ann Dowd, and Jodie Turner-Smith, set in the final weeks of the most consequential presidential election in history. A journalist teams up with her idol to uncover a conspiracy that places the fate of the election in the country in their hands. Oh, so it's a political thriller. Ah, okay. So yeah, The Independent. That's Brian Cox's new film. Be out later this year. Anybody that's out in the chat, please say hi. Please let me know what you think of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I'll be happy to share it all with you as we get into the second half here. Just to do another, we are 50 minutes. We are 50 minutes into Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Have approximately 54 minutes to go, so we're just about halfway here. And I pretty much run out of things to say. I mean, that's the thing about doing these double commentaries is that, I mean, there comes a point where I'm seriously not only exhausted from talking, but also, we'll tell you what, we're gonna do a little brief intermission here. I'll be right back. So yeah, I just had to take a drink real quick, but so yeah, this is when Caesar realizes that he is not going home. He is not going home with James Franco's character, and that's going to trigger his idea for revolution. So he can get back at the human race for what they did to his mother and for, essentially destroying his life. Here again, these effects, I mean, just stunning. I mean, I was stunned in 2011 and I'm still stunned now as to how good these effects are. They hold up so well. I mean, they certainly hold up a lot better than some of the later Planet of the Apes movies from the 70s. But now it's really weird. I mean, because I'm almost tempted to watch these movies separately to the 70s movies just because the makeup and the effects were so different at that time. I mean, they were, what we would now call primitive, but at the time they were groundbreaking. And I think the effects in this movie, I think, are also groundbreaking to an extent. This sequence right here where Tom Fulton really shows how much of a nasty son of a bitch he is. I mean, well, I trust me, he's the character that you love to hate. You love to hate Tom Fulton in this movie. I mean, he's that good. I mean, what can I say? He's that good. But yeah, he brings some buddies over here to, show off all the chimps and the orangutan that they have and everything. When I saw this in the theater, I almost just yelled out, "Oh, you asshole!" Like, come on, that's so mean. Yeah, if you want to get laid, stop acting like a dick. And that one's a pain in the ass. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I love all this. You feel Andy Serkis's anger. You really feel his anger and his desire to gain power and control to stop Tom Fulton. Very slickly, he stole that knife. Yeah. Very slickly, he stole that knife, and now he's using it to open up his cage and get out and use cookies to gain control of his fellow chimpanzees. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Now, what I especially love about this film, because in the earlier Planet of the Apes movies, I mean, Cornelius and his wife, and then eventually Caesar were the ones that we uh, primarily took a look at. But at the same time, here we actually have different apes with different personalities, um, all through motion capture, of course. Here we have our silverback. One movie that I don't think that gets mentioned nearly enough, but I think it's appropriate to mention it here, is the 1988 film Gorillas in the Mist, which told the true story of Dion Fossey, who went to Africa in the 1960s and vowed to protect the mountain gorilla from both poaching and the government, and from obviously their lands being impeded upon and everything. She devoted her life to that, and she ended up being murdered in 1985. We don't know exactly who was responsible. Um, Somebody just supposedly, according to the movie, somebody entered her cabin with a machete and just basically uh, killed her. And they made a very good movie about that in 1988, which has one of Sigourney Weaver's best performances. You all should check that out, because that movie is probably single-handedly responsible for saving the mountain gorilla population. I don't say that. I don't say that lightly. I do believe in my heart that that movie, and the fact that that movie was a hit, both critically and with audiences, and Dion Fossey's story was cemented. Um, I do believe that movie showcased how the mountain gorilla was saved by Dion Fossey, and her life story is very inspiring, but at the same time also controversial, because apparently she went to very violent means to protect the mountain gorillas. But absolutely worth seeing movie from 1988. And I've seen Dawn and War in the theaters. I actually have all three movies on steelbooks. Um, yeah, I have all three movies of Rise and Dawn and War on steelbooks. And as I mentioned during the last commentary, in during the Conquest commentary, that the brand new Planet of the Apes movie has officially been titled, and it will be shooting will begin in August of this year. And the title is in fact called The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And this will be officially the 10th Planet of the Apes movie. And yes, it will follow Rise and Dawn and War, and continue after Caesar, of course, died at the end of War. It does continue on after that with his family, and also the other ape characters. So it does continue in that universe. And we'll probably expect to see it about either 2023 or 2024. It's hard to say at this point, but yeah, I like the fact that there was a nice little break between War and Kingdom. So when we re-enter this world, hopefully it'll be given a lot more, given a much more fresh perspective, because Matt Reeves obviously is now working on the Batman sequel. For what was the name? Wes Ball. He's the director behind Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. He was the one responsible for the 3 Maze Runner movies, which collectively made a shit ton of money. Oh my God. When I checked the box office receipts for the Maze Runner movies, never seen them, by the way, but man, all 3 of them made bank. Oh my God. They were big hits for 20th Century Fox. So Wes Ball, who directed those movies, is going to be in charge of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. What can I say? I wish them all the luck in the world. I want this movie to be just as good as Rise and Dawn and War, which let me be honest, are still my favorite Planet of the Apes movies. I do prefer those films collectively as a trilogy over the originals. That's just me, though. James Franco here is quitting when David Oyelowo wants to continue with the research, even though there's still no definitive proof that it works and it will sustain itself. But as we know, Caesar's intelligence has gained a lot, as well as some of the other apes in the story. So collectively, they're getting together for a revolution. Actually, I think it was the orangutan. I forget his name, but the orangutan is the one that used to work in the circus. So I kind of like to think that as a nice little nod to the Ricardo Montalban character in Escape and Conquest. Who plays the neighbor in this movie? Oh God, he is so familiar. Every time I see this movie, I'm thinking, I know that guy from somewhere. But he's not part of the main cast. Oh, David Hewlett. Yeah, as Will's hot-headed neighbor, Douglas Hunsicker. What was he in? Well, he was in Scanners 2, The New Order. Yeah, there you go. No, I've seen him from something else. I know I've seen him from... He was in The Shape of Water. Yeah, he was in The Shape of Water, and he was also in Nightmare Alley. So he's been working with Guillermo del Toro of late. But he also did direct-to-video schlock like Boa versus Python. He played a doctor in that. Boa versus Python. Like... And of course, now that he has the option to go home, he's like, no, thank you. I'm not going home with James Franco and being molested. I don't know. Would you rather go home with Tom Felton or James Franco? Take your pick. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. I don't know. Tom Felton, I love that guy. It's clear he loves playing this sleaze. This real little shit that is just, that is constantly giving these poor apes abuse and everything. Oh, just here again, you love to hate his character. You absolutely love to hate his character. Let's do another timestamp here real quick. We are 1 hour and 4 minutes in. 1 hour and 4 minutes into Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and we have approximately 40 minutes left to go. Now here, as you can see, Caesar is using chocolate chip cookies to bring his fellow simians together. Now, see, this reminds me of some stuff in Conquest where, like, the humans were, making the apes do these marginal things, like pouring glasses of water and, stuff like that. And it kind of reminds me of that where, you're to do this. Now that this chimp realizes that Caesar has the power, he's in control. He's has far higher intelligence than all the other apes here. But that Maurice, that's the name of the orangutan. Excuse me, yeah. And Maurice would become a very memorable character later on in Dawn and War. Damn these effects. I mean, the hairs on the chimps, they look so damn real. I mean, they glisten in those lights. They really do feel like real apes. Look and feel like real apes. They really, really do. I mean, it's astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing. Oh, this is a very funny moment. I remember this was a pretty big laugh in the theaters, too, where Caesar has this discussion with Maurice of why Cookie Rocket. Apes alone. Weak. Apes together, strong. But, yeah, what is distracting them but average chimp antics? Nah, apes stupid. Caesar's like, we can still motivate them. we can still bring them together and motivate them. Yeah. And this other, same with Rodney. Is that the same guy? Huh. Oh. I was gonna say I thought that was one actor, but then I looked at the age and I was like, no, that can't be him. So I'm not even gonna go back there. But anyway. Why don't we also talk about some of the technical credits for Rise of the Planet of the Apes here? The cinematography was courtesy of Andrew Lesney, born in 1956 and passed away in 2015, very, very sadly, at age 59. He was an Australian cinematographer. He was from Sydney, Australia. And he shot the Lord of the Rings trilogy, as well as the prequel, The Hobbit trilogy. Then he just passed away at the age of 59. That's very, very sad. Yeah. His first film was Fair Game. The first film he shot was Fair Game in 86. Temptation of a Monk in 1993. He also shot Babe. A lot of us remember Babe, about the talking piglet, classic film from 1995. Two If by Sea with with Dennis Leary and Sandra Bullock. Then he did the sequel, Babe, Pig in the City, and then of course he shot Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King. He won the Oscar for Best Cinematography for Fellowship of the Ring, and also won the BAFTA Award for Best Cinematography for The Return of the King. And he also shot King Kong. And I am a fan of Peter Jackson's King Kong, very much so. I don't think, you know what? I don't even complain about the length of it. I love King Kong. He also shot The Lovely Bones, The Last Airbender, and the Hobbit trilogy. And his last film, he shot The Water Diviner for director Russell Crowe. for the guy's directorial debut, and then he passed away at the age of 59. That is very sad. What an accomplishment! What a massive accomplishment that he got in his career. Absolutely. And I really like the music to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which was done by Patrick Doyle, who is a Scottish film composer. And he had done films like Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Sense and Sensibility, Carlito's Way, the great Brian De Palma film, Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet. So yeah, he's Thor. He also scored Thor, Cinderella, Murder on the Orient Express, and he's been nominated for 2 Academy Awards and 2 Golden Globe Awards, and is the recipient of the ASCAP Henry Mancini Award for, quote, outstanding achievements and contributions to the world of film and television music. So yeah, really good score by Patrick Doyle. And I was also looking up real quick, what did Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver write before Rise of the Planet of the Apes? Well, they wrote that Sally Field revenge thriller called Eye for an Eye. Then they wrote The Relic for director Peter Hyams, which I saw in the theater and absolutely hated. There are people that like The Relic. I'm not one of them. I am definitely not one of them. After shooting Rise and Dawn, they also, after writing Rise and Dawn, they also wrote Jurassic World together. And then, of course, they served as producers on War for the Planet of the Apes. And they are also credited writers on the live-action Mulan film, as well as Avatar 3, which is now currently in post-production. But it doesn't look like, but they are connected to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I'm pretty sure that they came back as producers for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is pretty cool. So yeah, in this movie, this is 10 years. Well, excuse me, this is 8 years before 2020. 8 years before coronavirus started attacking the world. Uh, and this movie is ultimately going to end with a virus taking over the world and killing much of the human population. I don't think that the writers or anybody associated with Rise of the Planet of the Apes would have predicted this. But as far as I'm concerned, it makes the movie all the more prescient. Just as Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is prescient in its own way with its themes of fascism and revolution. Well, Rise of the Planet of the Apes is also about revolution and about how, viruses in laboratories, if they're ever released, oh man, can they do some serious damage to the human population? Oh, so the actor playing the sanctuary's caretaker Rodney, is an actor by the name of Jamie Harris. And he's actually a lot older than I expected. I mean, he's 49 in this movie, but he was in the Name of the Father. He was also in Fast Food, Fast Women, The Next Big Thing with Madonna, Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. And there's the famous line being repeated from the original Planet of the Apes: "Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape." Which I'm perfectly fine with being used in this context. I mean, I think there were critics that got a little tired of all the references to the old Planet of the Apes movies, but so what? So what? I mean, it works. It works. I have absolutely no objection to that whatsoever. And like I said, I mean, I know this is going to sound controversial, but I actually prefer Rise and Dawn and War over any of the original films, including the 1968 movie. So there you go. And indeed, the revolution has officially started. Hmm. When I watched this in the theaters, I mean, like I said, it was just about being in awe of these effects and how, here again, the masks, the makeup from the original films, they work in their own way. You can still get the human emotion through those, uh, through that makeup. Uh, but in the Weta digital effects here and through motion capture, we do feel the actors who are playing the apes. We do feel their emotion and we understand what they're thinking, what they're going through. And like I said, I mean, if you're like me, you actually root for Caesar in this movie way more than Conquest. Ah! And there, there goes Tom Felton, electrocuted to death. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Director Rupert Wyatt said in a video blog post, quote, "This is part of the mythology and it should be seen as that. It's not a continuation of the other films. It's an original story. It does satisfy the people who enjoy those films. The point of this film is to achieve that and to bring that fan base into this film exactly like Batman Begins." That is the model I think that other franchises have to follow, is that this is essentially the Batman Begins of the Planet of the Apes franchise. In a 2009 interview, director Rupert Wyatt said, quote, "We've incorporated elements from Conquest of the Planet of the Apes in terms of how the apes begin to revolt, but this is primarily a prequel to the 1968 film. Caesar is a revolutionary figure who will be talked about by his fellow apes for centuries. This is just the first step in the evolution of the apes, and there's a lot more stories to tell after this. I imagine the next film will be about the all-out war between the apes and the humans." Now, as we know, that eventually became War for the Planet of the Apes, because Dawn was more about a last chance for humans and apes to coexist. It was like the last chance until, well, as we all know, Koba kind of screwed everything up because of his mistrust of humans from these facilities. But you understand his motivation too. Tom Felton, man. I mean, he makes this entire second half of the movie just wonderful. But now he's gone now, so oh well. His character was a shit, though. Oh my god. It spoke. He spoke. Yep. Your ape spoke. Yes, it did. I can see this film working beautifully for those who even never even don't even remember the old Apes films. I mean, I think this drew in a lot of newcomers to the franchise, as opposed to the Tim Burton version, which you know kind of insulted, I think, the fan base more than anything else. But I don't know. I mean, what do you guys in the chat think of the Tim Burton movie as to this new trilogy? I mean, I'll be interested to hear what you think. Here's Brian Cox returning here. Hmm. After shooting the actors playing humans interacting with others wearing the motion capture suits, a clean plate was shot with actors for extra reference. Actor stuntman Terry Notary guided the actors on realistic ape movement while Weta Digital studied the chimps in the Wellington Zoo for reference. The digital apes also received detailed models with skeletons, muscles, and nerve tissue layers for accurate animation. Cast models of apes' heads and limbs help the texture department replicate skin details such as wrinkles and pores. Given the difference between human and chimpanzee facial muscles, the animators tweaked the performance through a new facial muscle system, adding dynamics, ballistics, and secondary motion. As the silent performance required expressive eyes, a new eye model was made to depict both greater accuracy and muscle movement in and around the eyes, and also tears, pupil dilation, and light refraction. While Andy Serkis was the primary performer for Caesar, as the effects team considered that at times Andy overcame the character, other motion capture team actors were also used, especially Devlin Dalton, whose height matched that of a chimpanzee. Along with that, they used Notary to play Caesar in stunt-filled scenes such as the Golden Gate Bridge scene. Music composer Patrick Doyle said, quote, he wanted to turn his score into a driving force that keeps audiences paying attention. He employed an African-American chorus and focused on percussion and low and deep orchestra sounds. Doyle collaborated closely with the sound department to make the music complement the sound effects, including writing a recurring theme based on their recording of a chimpanzee. Mm-hmm. Now, let's see, just 1 second here. I'm coming back in 1 second. Just need to fix this real quick. Now, in talking about the physical media for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I have personally, I have the Steelbook. It does contain several audio commentaries with the director and the writers, as well as 11 deleted scenes, a featurette about Andy Serkis called The Genius of Andy Serkis, a featurette, New Generation of Apes, Breaking Motion Capture Boundaries, The Great Apes and the Mythology of the Apes, and also a music score featurette with Patrick Doyle. So, yeah, and these steelbooks, they have they have all the extras from the Blu-rays. Like I said, I haven't heard anything yet about Planet of the Apes on 4K yet. I'm sure that's going to happen eventually, although Disney certainly hasn't announced anything yet. So your best bet is just to pick up the Blu-ray set for the moment. You know, it's funny. I actually got the steelbooks for Rise and War for $10 each at Best Buy, but now Best Buy has no more Blu-rays or physical media left in stock except for the big Disney items, which is really a shame. It really is a shame. So here we get with the here we have made it to the climactic action sequence on the Golden Gate Bridge, and this is just a thrilling sequence as of course, the apes are jumping up all over the cars. They're just trying to get past them. They just want to get to the redwoods, you know. And I'm glad this action sequence doesn't go overboard with the violence. I mean, Rise of the Planet of the Apes is, it has some disturbing elements in it, but it's certainly doesn't get as violent as Conquest. I think this bridge sequence, this Golden Gate bridge sequence, is actually done fairly well. I mean, they PG-13, so there was a limit on the amount of blood that they could use, obviously, but they don't go overboard with the violence. They don't get too graphic with it, which I actually appreciate in this film. And I do think it's better than the unrated cut of Conquest, by the way. I mean, the unrated cut of Conquest has its fair share of blood and gore and, massacres, you know what I'm saying? But this film didn't have to go that far. I mean, wait till war when things get really violent and that. But and in the theater, I never would have guessed that Caesar had said wait right there. There's Koba. Yeah. Koba's going to have a much more meatier role in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, obviously, when he begs in front of Caesar to not trust the last band of humans. Oh, wow. Yep, time for an ape slaughter. Now, look, I can guarantee you that most audiences, when they saw this in 2011, I can guarantee you that most of them were rooting for the apes. I mean, it would be interesting to take a poll on that. I think, but I think most people were rooting for the apes to win. I'm pretty certain because there's not a lot of likable human characters in this movie. Uh, look, James Franco's character, he meant well because he wanted to cure his father of his Alzheimer's, but you know, and like I said, Frida Pinto's role is practically thankless. I mean, she just doesn't do much here, even though she's definitely, she's definitely sweet. I mean, there's no taking that away from her, but she doesn't have much of a character. Wow. Just takes the guy right off the horse. I love it. Love it. Now that's actually a reflection of what happened at the end of the theatrical cut of Conquest, when it looked like the Silverback was about to seriously uh, beat that beat that cop up, and Caesar was like, "No, you know, they're just trying to get to the redwoods. They're just trying to get out of the city and get to the redwoods. They're not looking for war right here." Oh, that fog is certainly helping, isn't it? uh, wow. Well, anyway, CO2 Dave 1 and Rob Gasper and Dan and Uncle Beer and Alan Minecco, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Like I said, I hate to say it, I'm kind of out of things to say at this point, but might just sit back and enjoy the rest of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Oh, man. But yeah, this is all thrilling stuff. Well, just as a reminder to everybody, and I mentioned this during the Conquest commentary earlier, my next audio commentary is going to be on July 4th at 6:30 p.m., and I will be doing Oliver Stone's Born on the 4th of July, starring Tom Cruise as Vietnam veteran Ron Kovic. I've been preparing for this. I mean, not only was I able to re-listen to Ron Kovic's book, which is available on audiobook. I had to re-listen to it. But I'm also listening to a book that Oliver Stone put out only a couple years ago, which showcases his career up until he made Platoon in 1986, which I also mentioned earlier. So, at any rate, so join me July 4th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern for Born on the 4th of July, which is very much a July 4th film in every shape and form. It's awesome. And if you've never seen it before, Tom Cruise is unforgettable in it. He truly is unforgettable. Yeah, just throw them in the water. Yeah, I love that. And now they're all running away. But of course, the head of the institute is wealthy enough to get his own helicopter and hire somebody with a machine gun to shoot all the apes down on the bridge. And this is devastating. And here again, we don't really see any gore here. That's fine. You know, we don't need to make this any more graphic than it needs to be, like it was at the end of the unrated version of Conquest. But I mean, this pretty much keeps it within PG-13 parameters, which I'm perfectly fine with because it's all about the story. The story and Caesar's character is what matters in this movie. Oh no, and the silverback leaping to the helicopter, and then we get this eye-popping helicopter shot in the theaters. Oh, this was just sensational. And it crash lands on the Golden Gate Bridge. Nice. Nice. Great stuff. Great stuff. Sadly, the silverback didn't make it, so he's not going to be around for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is kind of a shame. See, Andy Serkis, through that performance capture, you feel his emotions. You absolutely feel his emotions. It's remarkable. Oh. Now, of course, death is going to have to come to the villain, David Oyelowo. Here again, bless the guy's heart. He's a great actor. He's done so many great roles. Someday I will get his last name right. This is a great moment right here. Like I said, powerful stuff in the theater. Powerful stuff. I mean, you don't think a summer blockbuster to be this intelligent and this thought-provoking, but damn it, it is. And it's wonderful. And like I said, I do honestly think Rise succeeds where Conquest failed. Not entirely. I mean, Conquest is not a failure on its own. But I do think it's a much more successful version of Caesar and his story. Let's put it that way. Like I said, all inspired by Nim Chimpsky, the late Nim Chimpsky. I mean, like I said, check out that documentary, Project Nim, and you will discover where the inspiration for Caesar came from with Project Nim. Oh, really? Brian Trash says, my second favorite Apes movie. Let me make a guess. Let me make a guess. Your first favorite is War, right? I mean that's just my guess. I mean, a lot of people like Dawn as well, but I think War has the highest Rotten Tomatoes score of all the movies, including the '68 original. I mean, the critics loved War, War of the Planet of the Apes. And I might do that with a double feature with Battle next year. I haven't decided yet. Obviously, we have a whole year to get to Battle of the Planet of the Apes. So I may do Dawn or I may do War. We'll have to see. But, you know. And this is a very, very moving final scene between James Franco and Andy Serkis. I might have had a tear in my eye in the theater. I'm not going to lie. I might have had a tear in my eye. That's how good it was. And there's a foreshadowing of Koba. Oh, Planet of the Apes, the original. Okay, okay. That's awesome. Awesome. Where when Caesar lifts Will up, you can see that he is now even taller than Will. To let him know he is officially grown up. He is no longer a baby. He is no longer a teenager. You know, he is now an adult ape. And very, very intelligent, very hurt for many, many reasons by Will and the human population. And this is where Andy Serkis's performance just crystallizes. So good in this movie. And they embrace, and he just says, Caesar is home. Caesar's home. Yeah. Like I said, very simple but very powerful ending. I mean, I was certainly looking forward to sequels after Rise. I'm not going to lie. I was already clamoring for 20th Century Fox, make the sequel. And it made more than enough money to justify a sequel. And, you know, Dawn would be made for about the same amount of money, and it made about 300 million, even more. You know, it had like a box office of like 750 million. So at any rate, I'm certainly looking forward to the fourth film in this new series, which will be, of course, The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, directed by the guy who did the Maze Runner trilogy. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes, but expect that to come. Expect The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes to come out next year or in 2024. Directed by Wes Ball. So we'll see what that's like. But this is, of course, the final shot of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Although there is an end credit sequence, which we'll point out here in a minute. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Brian. I'm so sorry. Yeah, we started Conquest at 9 p.m. So that's already been recorded. You can go back and start at the beginning of the video. I am just finishing Rise right here. The director credit, Rupert Wyatt, just came up. Yeah, Conquest was at 9 p.m. Eastern, and I started Rise of the Planet of the Apes at 10:40. So, and we are just concluding now, but you can go back to listen to Conquest, the Conquest commentary as it's already recorded. But before I end the stream, we do have this final sequence in the end credits where the neighbor, who of course freaked out over Caesar's existence, is now getting on a plane. He's evidently a pilot. And of course, he just caught the virus from James Franco's co-worker. So now he's going to spread it around the globe. And here again, very dark parallels with the coronavirus, which came about 9 years after this movie came out. Yeah. And it plunges the world into a pandemic, which it had never seen before. And here we have this final shot. There's the director of photography, Andrew Lesney, production designer Claude Perret, as we showcase the virus spreading around the globe. Yeah. like those newer Apes movies much more than Burton's movie. Oh, absolutely. I mean, see, that's the thing. If it wasn't for Battle of the Planet of the Apes, which is pretty bad, I think the Tim Burton one is the worst one. I don't know if I can say it's worse than Battle, just because I mean, the makeup effects in by Rick Baker in the Tim Burton movie are good, but that's like the only good thing about it. Everything else is, I think, pretty much crap. But at any rate, so that was Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Thank you so much for coming out and joining me tonight for these two commentaries for Conquest and Rise. I will see you all back here 6:30 p.m. on July 4th for Born on the 4th of July, directed by Oliver Stone and starring Tom Cruise. So looking forward to all you joining for that. Burton is worse than Battle. Really? You know what? Next year, 1973, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a double feature of both Battle of the Planet of the Apes and also the Tim Burton version. It would be interesting to have a comparison, a side-by-side comparison, actually see which one is worse. I don't know. We'll definitely see. But anyway, Brian, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I hope you enjoyed the Conquest commentary. And I will see you all back here July 4th at 6